Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Shrewsbury Zoning Board of Appeals regular meeting for Monday, November 24th, 2025. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review and sign a bill for $311.30 to the Community Advocate for the October 27th, 2025 legal notices. Can I please get a motion?
I move to approve the bill.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Moving into the public hearing. First hearing, this is to hear the appeal of Christopher Pothier, 14 Vista Drive, Shrewsbury, Mass., for a variance to the Shrewsbury zoning bylaws, Section 7, Table 2, to construct an addition 8.9 feet from the side yard setback where 10 feet is required upon property located at 14 Vista Drive in the Residence B1 zoning district. The subject premise is described on the Shrewsbury Assessor's Tax Plate 17, Plot 028000. Could the applicant please step forward?
Seat or the podium?
Right here at this table, and you can have a seat, and if you could state your name for the record.
Chris Pothier, Pothier.
Wonderful, welcome. If you could walk us through what you're intending on doing.
So we live in a 3-bed, 1-bath ranch. We have 2 kids, third on the way due March, and we're looking to add a master bathroom off of the north side of our house, which is where the property is a little bit tight. We chose to go off the north side of the house instead of the west side to preserve the size of our yard that we have remaining. I think it'd be 17 by 6 feet, but currently the 1 bathroom is a little tight.
Imagine. All right, we're going to open it up for the board's questions. Dave, would you like to start us out?
Nothing yet at this time.
Ann?
I didn't have any questions about this. It seems pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Megan?
I don't have any questions. I'm good.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand, that's all.
Take your time, Fran.
Yeah, I don't have anything right at this moment, but let me try and understand.
Okay. Maybe we hear some public comments and get back to comments?
I agree with that.
Okay, all right. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to be heard on this matter?
Okay,
Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn the public hearing, please?
I move to adjourn the public hearing.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any further discussion on this? Fran?
yeah, so we have a shed existing there, according to plot plan?
Correct.
Sir? There is an
Yes.
existing shed there?
Yes.
Okay. Did any of the abutters all got notice? Nobody abutter here?
No one's here.
Nothing here?
So
Okay.
we did receive some correspondence. I believe that was included in the materials, more just questioning about specifics of the application. That information was provided to the abutters, so they were notified and we got some questions.
I'm okay I'm good. I don't
Okay.
have any more.
I too have no questions, so if I get a motion, please.
I can make a motion.
Go ahead, Fran.
I move that the matter of 14 Vista Drive, variance section 7, table 2, to construct an addition 8 9/10 feet from the side yard where 10 feet is required, to approve.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda. This is to hear the appeal of Bill Garcia, 248 Spring Street, for 2 special permits to the Shrewsbury zoning bylaws, Section 4B and Section 7, Table 2, to demolish and reconstruct a pre-existing non-conforming structure with an addition 18.7 feet from the front yard setback where 30 feet is required, and to increase lot coverage to 35% where the minimum allowed is 30%, upon property located at 106 South Street in the Residence B1 zoning district. Subject premise is described on the Shrewsbury Assessor's Tax Plate 29, Plot 030000. Can the applicant please step forward?
So I believe the applicant's online.
He's on the screen, I think.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Mr. Garcia, you're on mute.
Yeah.
He's probably trying to figure that out.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
Hello? Hello?
Hello there.
Hello? Oh, I'm sorry, Bob.
Could you please
Yes,
state
my
your
name is,
name for the record?
My name is Bill Garcia.
Hi, Bill. Can you tell us what you're intending on doing at the property?
Oh, yes, basically it's the, what you described it on the application. We are looking into, making an addition and also to build up or to demo the existing structure, which is in very bad condition. And, we have an existing building permit to work on the structure, but after the engineers and, look at it, there's not possible to work in the existing structure. So we are looking for, doing an addition and also to, building at the same footprint in above of the existing footprint.
Okay. We have a lot in our Google Drive, so we're all trying to just make sure we have everything in front of us that we need so we can ask questions. Dave, do you want to start us out?
Yeah, did you say you're going to demolish and rebuild the garage in the same location where it is?
Oh, actually, yes, both the house and the garage. The garage is the building, the structure of the garage, it have the same condition of the house, which is not possible to recover it to, it's very unsafe and it is so deteriorated that it's not possible to fix it.
Okay, and then, so the garage is exactly the same footprint as it is, and then the house is the one that's being expanded, correct?
Absolutely, sir, yes.
Okay. I got nothing else right now.
Okay. Ann?
So I do have a couple of questions. If I understand correctly, both the house and the garage will be demolished. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So can you explain a little bit about why it's not possible to build the new construction in conformity with the setbacks?
Yes, we have a building permit right now, and when we start to working with the engineer and the contractors to working on the walls and everything, they reported the walls, they were in a bad condition and safe to work first. And then the house, it had been built in such a way that it's not, it doesn't comfort for any kind of code, construction codes up to date. It has no seal plates. It has no foundations. The walls are like 2x3s. They have no insulation, and there is no attachment between the foundation and the walls.
Sure, I understand that that's why you have to demolish the existing structure, but
Yes.
I'm missing why you can't build a new structure in conformity with the setbacks.
Oh, because the lot is unique, and if we build them with the setbacks, it will be no space to have in a standard house. It will be, I mean, there will be so much less space that we won't be able to build anything over there.
Okay, thank you.
You can see like the triangle over there, like the setbacks, and like the red and the pink lines. Those are the bylaws today's zoning laws, and it won't be room for any structure over there.
Okay, thank you.
Megan?
I don't think I have any questions at this time.
Okay. Fran?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Just to make sure I understand this right, the new structure sits in the old footprint,
Yes.
but you're expanding it to these red lines I see on your plot plan.
Yes, we can do it by right. It won't be interfering with the zoning. The addition on the red lines, it won't be interfering with the zoning by law.
I'm looking, okay, I get it. I mean, if there's, help me out here, Madam Chair, if there's an existing nonconformance and we are in the same footprint, is that okay by default? Because you had a pre-existing,
Let's let Chris, the expert
So
on
I
this.
can provide some additional context. So in this instance, the pre-existing garage and house are what is considered pre-existing non-conforming, essentially to demolish and reconstruct or add additions to any pre-existing non-conforming structure requires a special permit with the Zoning Board of Appeals. And so typically, having any construction within that setback would be a variance, but in this case, because it's pre-existing non-conforming, it reduces that threshold to a special permit criteria. So as noted, in this case, the house is pre-existing non-conforming, so in relation to the setbacks and the garage structure, as well as in relation to the setbacks. We did also, in reviewing the application, note that this slightly it's existing over the lot coverage requirements. And so, again, as an addition, it's increasing the nonconformity of lot coverage requirements as well.
already non-conforming.
Correct, very slight, it's right on the lot coverage requirements, essentially, 30.01.
So that increment will only gonna be like 5% of the, by, what is required by the law.
5 additional percent.
Yes.
No butters?
Won't know until we open the public.
Sorry.
Do you want to go with public hearing first?
Yeah, I
Okay.
Make a motion.
Anything else, Chris?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, great. It's a public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to be heard on this matter? If you could step forward, please, right here. Right up here, and if you could state your name and address for the record.
Okay. Yep, I'm Pam Brzezowskis at 116 South Street. So I just had a few questions. I don't know if it pertains to this board, but I was wondering if they know the size of the home that they want to build there? How many square feet? Is it going to enter on South Street? Is the driveway going to be there, or is it going to be on, is it Farview or
Yep,
Keswick?
Farview.
Keswick?
Keswick, sorry.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of curious about that. It looks as though demolition has already started, but maybe he said he had a permit for that. Not sure. And then I would just want to know what the time frame is for building the new structure. So do you keep track of how much square footage the home would be?
Yep. So
Okay.
let's ask Mr. Garcia, if you could give us an idea
Okay.
of the size of the building, please?
Yeah. So basically, yeah, we are looking into build a 2,200 square foot house. And to answer the question, the house is going to be located as is right now. Driveway is going to stay the same. The property landscape is going to be the same. Yes, we have a building permit for the project, but when we noticed the situation, I reported to the building department. I got in contact with the building department. I called them and I showed them what was the situation. So they are asking me to go to this process and go to the from you guys to get a special permit. And I believe this is all good for everybody. But the house has been sitting there for a long time, and it's good for the neighborhood, good for the city to put this house that it has been with all kind of issues over there, unsafe and whatnot, so many things. It will be good for everybody to use the land and put it like something that it will look good and it will have issues for the neighborhood. So if we granted the application, we already started, as she said, we already started on the site, but we have to change the direction because what we found in the structure, we are looking to make this project into the terms of 6 months.
And I just wanted to clarify, it is a single-family home?
It is a single family home, yes.
Okay. Okay, I guess that's basically it.
Thank you for your questions.
Sure. Thank you.
Anyone else that wishes to be heard? All right, can I get a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. I don't have any further questions. Any other discussion before we?
Yeah, I have one for Mr. Garcia. Could you elaborate, there are contour lines on the plot plan. Could you elaborate on like the general like topography or slope of the property?
Yes, so on the back of the property, we have a kind of in a slope that at the front of the house is very flat, but on the back of the property it has slope, and some trees that we're gonna need to cut it out and take care of them, and also we might have to put a retaining wall behind the house.
Okay, and there's currently a
My
lot of trees and
Yes.
and whatnot on the South Street side and the Keswick Street side, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I have.
Mr. Garcia, you have a fairly steep retaining wall on the South Street side, I believe.
Yes, yes.
What's the integrity of that wall?
It's very solid. I already brought some contractors in there, and everybody's amazing how that wall is steady, and it have been seems to be for so many years, and looks like nothing happened to them to the wall. It looks so good. I mean, it was made with the good in the good way, and it's very solid. It's solid as a rock.
Okay, and then could I just ask again, with the garage, your intention is to do nothing to the garage? You're gonna rebuild it?
Rebuilding the same footprint.
And it is a two-car detached garage, is that
No, it's only one car garage.
one-car detached garage that
Yes.
you're gonna intend to rebuild?
Yes, one car garage, yes.
Okay. Okay. I don't really have any issues.
Yeah, I would say that the lot area and the size and topography of the lot presents some challenges for the applicant,
Right.
and is remaining, within the pre-existing non-conforming definitions of the structure that's there already.
Right. I would agree. Okay. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to approve the petition of Bill Garcia for 2 special permits at 106 South Street, Shrewsbury, Mass. In Residence B1 District for Section 4B and Table 7, Table 2, to demolish and reconstruct a pre-existing non-conforming structure with an addition 18 7/10 feet from the front yard setback where 30 feet is required, and to increase the lot coverage from 35% where the maximum allowed is 30%.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda. This is to hear, excuse me, I just want to make sure I'm on the right one.
190.
Jared Fiore?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. This is to hear the appeal of Jared Fiore, 1 Mercantile, Suite 220, Worcester, Mass., for an appeal of planning board site plan to construct a gasoline service station with related convenience store, quick-serve restaurant, and car wash facility upon property located at 193 Hartford Turnpike in the limited industrial zoning district. Subject premise is described on the Shrewsbury Assessor's Tax Plate 52, Plot 125000. Welcome. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Good evening, members of the board, Madam Chair. My name is Jared Fiore. I'm an attorney with Prince Lobel in Worcester, and I'm here this evening on behalf of Demoulas Supermarkets, Inc., the appellant. With me this evening is attorney Carmine Tomas of Demoulas and also Robert Nagy of VHB. Demoulas is appealing the September 12th, 2025 decision of the Planning Board to grant site plan approval for a project located at 193 Hartford Turnpike, which is shown here on this printout. Demoulas is aggrieved by the fact that the Planning Board did not follow the town bylaws in ensuring compliance with certain standards within those bylaws, including that curb cuts and driveway openings are safe and convenient in location and in relation to the adjacent street network, and that the use will not create nuisance of traffic generated or otherwise conditions that are detrimental to the public good. And as a result of this, the decision should be overturned and the site plan approval should be denied. Now, the planning board had hearings in December of 2024, in February, March, April, May, July, and August of 2025, in which they heard about this project. It includes a gasoline service station, a convenience store with a drive-up window, and also a car wash. The location is shown here at the corner of Lake Street and Hartford Turnpike, also known as Route 20. My client, Demula Supermarkets, Inc., owns the shopping center at Edgemere Crossing, which would be shown across the street from Route 20 over here at 200 Hartford Turnpike. Can you see this okay on this side?
I wish we had it on the
Can I
screen.
turn this way a little bit? The original site plan that the applicant proposed had driveways located here, up at the eastern end on Route 20, right in the middle on Route 20 here, and then on Lake Street over here. Now, through the planning board process, the applicant had received some negative feedback from Mass DOT about this middle driveway on Route 20 here. It originally had a left-out option and a right-out option. So the left-out option would go east on Route 20, the right-out option would go west on Route 20. We raised this as one of the issues in the planning board process, but as I said, Mass DOT also provided some negative feedback about it, and eventually the applicant eliminated the left-out option onto Route 20. Reason being, you'd have to cross the westbound traffic through multiple lanes, and it's a very high-speed area there because of it. So that was eliminated. That was a necessary item for this to proceed forward. We think it was the right choice, but as the traffic engineer for the applicant identified, this in and of itself created additional problems with the site plan as it existed. It contributed to problems that already existed with the site plan. The applicant was here before this board approximately a year ago, September of 2024, seeking special permits and variances. And when it was here, it presented the original site plan to you, or the former board that existed at the time. And that had that left-out option. Obviously, it was a proponent of that at that time. And in being a proponent of it, the traffic engineer of the applicant demonstrated and advocated for that left-out option, claiming that it was basically a necessity of the site plan for it to function. And if it wasn't allowed, it would have what he called unintended consequences. We raised this before the planning board. If you go back and look at the video of the applicant being here before the ZBA, September 30th of 2024, the traffic engineer for the applicant said, quote, "That left turn at the proposed Route 20 driveway, if it were not provided, would have the potential for secondary impacts, unintended impacts. That could either mean an increase in traffic to Lake Street to get to the signal, to make that left turn, or more likely, someone making a right turn to get into the left turn lane at the signal on Route 20, to turn left into the Edgemere Crossing Plaza, to go through the Edgemere Crossing Plaza, to get to the easterly driveway at the Edgemere Crossing Plaza to continue their trip," end quote. That was at the 24-minute mark, if you would go back and look at it. So what he was describing is someone would come out of this middle driveway on Route 20 and get in the left turn lane to then make a U-turn, but through Edgemere Crossings Plaza, through where the Market Basket is located today. Not stopping to shop there, but bypassing the people that are coming and going from their cars to go to those shops, to the bank that's there, and using that to go to an easterly driveway up here at Edgemere Crossing to then get going easterly on Route 20 again. Or the other alternative he identified was that it would force more traffic to go over here to this Lake Street driveway. He stated at another point in that hearing before this board, at the 30-minute mark, quote, "I mentioned unintended consequences of anything that's developed here. To the extent a left turn is not allowed, folks will have to rely on Lake Street more regularly, or would most likely use the Edgemere Crossing Plaza as a staging point to be able to continue their trip eastbound. I don't think those conditions are ideal, end quote. That sentence was his words. I don't think those conditions are ideal. They're not ideal. Forcing traffic in this congested area, or more likely, as he said, through my client's property, to use it as a thoroughfare. So as to that Route 20 driveway, what did the applicant do before the planning board within the last year while there were a number of hearings? The applicant did not offer any solutions to prevent what the traffic engineer identified was the likely scenario of people going through Edgemere Crossing, through that plaza to reverse direction. It's a significant safety issue for Demoulas. At the very least, obviously, a nuisance issue. As to the proposed driveway on Lake Street, it's located only 120 feet from the intersection where the light is here, Lake Street and Route 20. There's natural queuing that occurs along Lake Street because of the signal, as you have with any signal throughout the town. A signal is designed intentionally to stop traffic for a period of time, so you can have an orderly flow of traffic going in each direction. There's obviously natural queuing that occurs there. The problem lies with where the applicant wants to put this driveway because of that queuing. It wants to put the driveway within 120 feet, which is very close to that signal. And that comes within the queuing area. And put it up here, where there'd be no queuing, put it within the natural occurring queuing area. Now, the town had a peer review done of this site plan. That was done by Bowman. And the latest one in March of 2025, Bowman said, quote, Bowman recommends the applicant include mitigation measures to reduce vehicle queuing along Lake Street, and that the applicant should explore additional improvements at the Lake Street driveway to improve operations for vehicles exiting the site. Now, Demoulas also hired a traffic engineer, Mr. Nagy, who's here tonight. He has a lot of experience with this intersection, having worked for Demoulas, the design and the mitigation that goes on here and the monitoring. Demoulas hired him to come before the planning board to identify and share his expertise and his analysis with the planning board. And he said similar things to what the town peer reviewer traffic engineer had said. He identified that this could increase congestion in this area because of how close the driveway was to the signal, how the natural queuing had occurred here, and this would cause issues. Identified that there could be gridlock here because of traffic coming down Route 20, taking a right onto Lake Street, but being blocked by people trying to take a left out and getting stuck in the queuing and then blocking up that roadway. Lake Street's obviously an important street to the town for access in and out of this area. So what did the applicant do in response to that? Well, before the planning board, the applicant didn't do anything to address that issue. The only thing it did was finally at the July 10th, 2025 hearing, is it brought before the planning board 2 concept plans for widening the approach on Lake Street right here to make it additional lanes. It would be 4 lanes. This was the first of the 2 concept plans. You can see how they've added an additional lane for the approach. Let's come down here. Okay. And a second one I'll show you in a minute is very similar. The applicant specifically identified that this would be the solution to the problem. The problem with this, though, is that it was just a concept idea. It was not a concrete solution. It was a proposal. It was a hope, a prayer. They identified that it would require land takings and acquisitions or easement rights from abutters and potentially the removal of a town pump station that's up here. it's shown in color here, the areas that the applicant identified would have to be taken from other landowners. They came before the board with this idea, but no actual concrete deal in place where landowners would provide this land or these easement rights. So as it stands today, legally, it cannot be done. Okay? I'll show you the second one, which is very similar. Okay. Another version of the widening. Again, the color shows easements or property rights that would have to be taken by other landowners. And the town pump station that might have to be moved up in this area. There was no evidence before the planning board, no evidence that this actually was set in place and could be done. There was also no technical information provided by the applicant as to what would be necessary if this could go in place. If they had the property rights in hand and could do this tomorrow, what else would have to be changed about this intersection? They didn't provide any technical information about whether Edgemere Crossing's driveway here would have to be realigned. They didn't provide any technical information about whether the signals in this area would have to be physically moved somewhere else. They didn't provide any technical information about the 2 lanes coming down Lake Street that would now turn left and merge over here onto Route 20. If Route 20, that shoulder needed to be widened in that area. Could a tractor trailer and a vehicle make that transition? None of that information was provided. Was this the optimal layout? Was this an optimal layout? There was no review of it. And that was presented in July of 2025. Demoulas urged the planning board, strongly urged the planning board, that before granting site plan approval, it should have the applicant conclusively demonstrate that it had the property rights to do one of these, or the town had the property rights to do it, so that they wouldn't be concept ideas. Or alternatively, propose to the planning board some reduced concept whereby a widening could occur just with the land that the applicant owned. But they didn't show that. Perhaps having reached its point of exhaustion with the project, the planning board in September decided to approve site plan approval for this. But it did so without addressing the issue that the applicant's own traffic engineer identified as the likely situation of people using Edgemere Crossing Plaza to reverse direction. It did so without having the applicant have a concrete plan in place to widen that approach on Lake Street, so that the queuing would be reduced short of where the proposed driveway was going to be, so that wouldn't be an issue. It did so without any improvements to the Lake Street driveway, which is what Bowman, the town's own peer reviewer, suggested should be put forth. So essentially, the planning board approved it with these open items. The planning board's action did not comply with the town bylaws. Section 7F of the bylaw provides that site plans are required in part for the purpose of assuring minimum traffic impacts and safe access. Pursuant to Section 7F3C of the bylaw, the planning board can only approve a site plan if it makes certain findings with respect to a number of different factors, including that curb cuts and driveway openings are convenient and safe in relation to the adjacent street network, including that the use will not create a nuisance of traffic generated or other conditions that are detrimental to the public good. But the applicant never actually addressed these issues. These issues which its own traffic engineer identified as problems, issues that the town peer reviewer identified as problems, issues that Demoulas's traffic engineer identified for the planning board. The planning board was apparently swayed by this concept idea, these concept plans. But as it stood, the planning board did not have any evidence, no evidence before it upon which it could make a finding. The findings that they were required to make under the bylaws about these certain factors. And therefore, as a result, because of that, the decision needs to be reversed and site plan approval denied. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would you like to go first? Sure.
Thank you. I have some questions of Attorney Madaus. Thank you for coming, Attorney Madaus. If I'm understanding this correctly, this is a somewhat unusual appeal of a planning board decision coming before the ZBA because of a quirk of the law. Are you able to tell us what's our standard of review here today?
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. Stephen Madaus, Town Council. And in response to that question, our bylaw provides that any person aggrieved by a site plan decision may appeal under Section 8 of Chapter 48 to the Board of Appeals. So it's not necessarily a quirk. Not all municipalities provide an appeal mechanism to site plan review, because as you know, site plan review is a review of an allowed use. It's not a determination as to whether the use would be allowed like a special permit. It's a review with limited reasonable conditions to regulate the use. But our bylaw provides an appeal process, not just for the applicant, but it says any person aggrieved by a decision of the planning board. And it invokes Section 8 of Chapter 40A, which you're familiar with as an administrative appeal. So this board has all the authority of the board below, which is the planning board. So you have all the authority of the planning board to modify or overturn the site plan decision that's being subject to the appeal. Of course, the burden is on the appellant, as presented by Attorney Fiore here, of their case as to why the decision should be overturned. It would require 4 votes of this board to overturn the decision of the planning board, or to modify it pursuant to your rules. So it's really open. It is a public hearing, so I expect we'll hear from the applicant for site plan approval, but this board has all the authority as the appeal board to modify, rescind, or uphold the decision below, and you can investigate, look into any of the claims as to why the decision should be modified or should be upheld.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Matt,
Yeah, Fran, sure.
can I go?
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Fiore?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where's your, can I see that?
This is the applicant's engineering.
You've got that? That's good.
Is it possible to put a light here?
So
A traffic signal?
you're pointing to the
This
easterly
driveway.
driveway, which is a one-way.
Well, it can be made 2 ways. Make it light. Is that, I'm asking, is
Yes.
MassDOT gonna, please, Chris.
So in relation to putting a traffic signal there, that would require a MassDOT approval to consider. They would determine if it meets the warrant for a traffic signal at that location.
Okay.
That's not under the purview of the planning board to compel.
My opinion, this is never gonna work. It's just never gonna work. Someone's gonna block this, it's gonna jam up worse than it is. This exit, you can't go out here to try and make a left-hand turn, or it's gonna be mayhem. Can you make a U-turn out of here? How many left-hand turn lanes are there? One? I'm asking you, sir, how many left-hand turn
Yes,
lanes?
I'd ask Mr. Nagy to confirm. How many left-hand turns are there
Here, just like,
on
you state
Route
your
20
name?
to go?
Yeah, it's Rob
Say your name
Nagy.
for the record, please.
Yep, Rob Nagy with VHB. So there's only one left turn lane at that location, heading in the westbound direction.
so someone coming out of here making a right could reasonably make a U-turn right in the middle of the
They would-
road. He doesn't have to go through here.
They would have to
Fran.
cut.
Can you speak through the chair, please?
I'm sorry?
Speak through the chair.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right.
What I'm saying is, madam, is that this will not work, in my opinion, in any shape other than making right-hand turns that go north. in my opinion, that people could make this left-hand U-turn, which is a mitigating thing. Another mitigation to me is to traffic light this thing. But this, making a left, coming out here, I won't support it.
Okay. Chris?
So I just wanted to state, so in terms of this plan and the review that was done, we've uploaded the planning board's record. So the board has 100 days to consider this application, which puts us beyond the December 22nd meeting. What I'd encourage is the board members to look at the record that the planning board considered. There's a wealth of information there that goes into significant detail of the turning movements, of different design elements, and the planning board, in rendering their decision, considered all of that information. In addition to that, I would point the board to the conditions of approval of that decision, which includes extensive post-occupancy monitoring of traffic. It includes additional improvements and potential for improvements both to Lake Street, as well as encouraging coordination with MassDOT on the Route 20 sections that connect to the driveway. A major part of the discussion certainly was traffic. The board and any members of the public are well aware of the existing conditions at this location that are challenging, to put it lightly, in its existing state. The board is, I'm sure, aware that Demoulas and their project was recently put in. The status of that, they also have traffic monitoring obligations that essentially mirror what was placed on the 193 Hartford Turnpike applicant to a large extent. Demoulas is still in the process of meeting those obligations. They includes already some traffic signalization timing to improve some of the flow of that traffic. And those are ongoing improvements that will need to be coordinated. So that is all information that the board was considering in rendering their decision, as well as improvements to Route 20. There are some conceptual designs in terms of Route 20 for stanchion placement. Again, requires MassDOT approval, but the board did consider that with the applicant in terms of proposing that to MassDOT as some form of solution that MassDOT could consider, as well as Mr. Fiore represented, they evaluated some conceptual schematic designs for a fourth lane on Lake Street, understanding some of the challenges at that intersection and potential capacity issues. So there is a wealth of information that is included in that record. I would not expect the board to be able to parse through that in short order. So I would just encourage review of that, and I think we can then have a more informed discussion on the 22nd. Just going a little bit further in terms of the fourth lane improvements, to add some additional color to that discussion, the board was also looking at what the commensurate benefit, the commensurate obligation of the applicant in relation to their scope of the project would be for those intersection improvements, and balancing that with the obligation. So that project's impact on those existing conditions. So again, this intersection is a significant focus, not just of this project, but of a number of moving pieces in that location. So piecing those all together would take coordination of MassDOT, Demoulas, this applicant, and the town to effectuate meaningful changes, and that is all in process. This is one piece of that puzzle. So again, I don't want to, it's up to the board to determine if the planning board placed conditions and reviewed the information commensurate with the obligations of site plan approval. And it's up to this board to review that and make their determination. So.
Okay. Proceed through additional comments. I'm going to start on this side, if you don't mind. Dave?
I will definitely agree with Mr. McGoldrick, and that there is a very large amount of information for us to work through. I have watched many, but not all, of the planning board meetings with regard to this particular topic. And typically, they run on the hour or so amount of duration for just this particular application. So I am in agreement that this is probably not something that we can get through completely just tonight. I am happy to look at it again on the 22nd. And I will also echo that the existing conditions are challenging, and that needs to be considered when interpreting, the applicant's, essentially request for change, what's going on here. I am also curious, I have questions for the representative of Demoulas and whatnot, but I would like to save those until after public comment, when we can hear the actual property applicant.
Fair. Ann?
I agree with David. I think we need some more time to look. I'm happy to hear what the public has to say.
Okay.
I'm on the same page.
Same, th-
Yep.
Fran?
Only comment I'd have is that even with all of the mitigation measures and things like that, once you're in, you're committed. There's no putting the toothpaste back in this tube if we permit those kinds of traffic patterns, is all I'm saying. Once it's in, once we do it, even all the mitigations or monitoring and everything in the world is going to be difficult to undo what we've done. That's just what I have to say.
Okay.
I have a question for town staff. When or I guess I just would like some elaboration on what a traffic monitoring program entails. What are actions that can be taken beyond once a traffic monitoring plan is in place? What are, some of the ways that story unfolds?
Yeah, so I'm sure the traffic engineers can give a better explanation of it, but in broad terms, it follows a MassDOT process. So it requires monitoring annually for a period of 5 years of the traffic conditions. So they use the traffic study that is done during the site plan approval process as the baseline study. That sets the baseline figures and interpretation of what the traffic is projected to be with the project. Throughout that 5-year monitoring, the threshold is set at a 10% increase beyond what is projected. So if the traffic monitoring finds that there is additional traffic beyond what was projected and essentially represented to the board, a certain set of criteria are outlined that the board can then pursue. So essentially, the applicant returns to the planning board and potentially faces additional obligations to mitigate the traffic that is being generated. In this case, could be up to and including adding that fourth lane, acquiring rights to the property. So there's some substantive obligations that are outlined that could be triggered under that decision if traffic conditions are beyond what was projected and assumed in the traffic reports. And again, one of the mitigations that was proposed and is required, not related to the traffic monitoring in that Lake Street entrance, was a do not block the box entrance to allow that exiting of the vehicles. In relation to the queuing, it is understood that there would be queuing at that location. Again, there's existing queuing there. In terms of safety, it was discussed of having the vehicles queue on the applicant's site rather than trying to get into the lanes, so to block that intersection. So again, it's all included in the record in that discussion that was had. I don't want to there was a lot that was there, so I don't want to try to compact it into a few minutes here, but again, there was a lot of discussion around that intersection and that entranceway in terms of traffic flows and patterns, so.
Any additional questions before we move on to public hearing? All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to be heard on this matter?
My name is Donald O'Neill. I'm a lawyer in Worcester, and here this evening with me is Bob Michaud from MDM Transportation, and we were representing the proponent in this case before the planning board, also previously before your board. There's nothing new here. All these issues were raised before. They were all considered by the board and found to be without merit. All of our work was reviewed by the town engineers, who are independent peer reviewers. They were satisfied with the design that we came up with. A lot of the comments this evening relate to comments by Mr. Michaud, and he's here, so I would let him probably address those, but they were, for the most part, related to statements made before the zoning board, which was about a year before we made our way through the planning board process. And as you will note from the board's decision, the board went through, it's a 14-page decision. They address each and every one of the points that are required for site plan approval. Site plan approval is supposed to be a situation where if you meet the requirements, you get approved. And we met the requirements, and all of the town engineers that were reviewing this, independent of us or the opponents, found that we satisfied the conditions. The comments related to the appearance before the zoning board took place long before a lot of the additional work that was required by the planning board took place, in terms of looking at the traffic reports and the number counts and all of that information. The Lake Street driveway is a secondary minor driveway, actually, for this project. It is anticipated that the bulk of the traffic will come and go directly from Route 20. And in fact, most of the traffic is anticipated to be pass-by traffic that's on Route 20 anyway. This is not a destination spot that anyone is necessarily has their favorite gas station that they're going to go to and make a special trip to get to the gas station. There are people who are already passing and on the road on Route 20. The situation with Lake Street is a problem that's almost entirely the result of the success of Market Basket's development across the street. They've been there now for 5 years. They've had an ample opportunity to address that problem. They haven't successfully at this point. Mr. Michaud can explain, but our contribution to the traffic on Lake Street is a drop in the bucket. It's a very minor provision, and in fact, we've looked at what impact that would have to alleviate the existing conditions. And again, it's very minor. We're not going to impact that in a significant way. And to suggest that that is now going to overwhelm Lake Street, I don't think is correct in terms of the additional traffic that would be generated by our project that would use Lake Street is not significant. And we've studied it. We've presented that information to the board. That was reviewed by the town's engineers and found to be in compliance with, the requirements of the town. The issue with respect to the possible grand solution, which would be to add an additional lane to Lake Street, that was a result of citizen input that was raised at one of the meetings. Someone came forward and said, I have an idea to solve the problem at Lake Street, and he proposed that. And as part of the process with the planning board said to us, not that we are contributing to such an extent that this would be necessary for us. It's a situation that would actually help alleviate Demulis's problem. And they asked us to go and look at this and come back with some sort of a design concept. They weren't asking for a complete engineered plan. They asked us to do that. We did do it. We looked at a couple of situations where we thought that there might be the ability to have an impact on the situation. Those do involve land takings from the gravel operation. There's also a town water pump or sewer pump. And it would be something which would ultimately require probably participation of both the town and the state, as well as the various abutters to the project on the street. We, in response to, basically a request from the planning board, agreed as a condition of the approval, and as part of our process, that if the town elected to go that route, because it would be something, no individual applicant has the ability through eminent domain to take other people's property, particularly where they're having minor impact on the road work that's involved. We looked at what it would take from our project in order to make that possible, if that ever came to pass, and agreed that we could provide the space and would provide an easement over the property that we're looking to develop that would eliminate the need for an eminent domain taking and the expenditure of funds, by the town of Shrewsbury for that purpose, and said that we would, have no objection to that and would agree to do that. And that was it. That's basically what they were looking for. They weren't looking for anything beyond that, and they didn't ask us to provide anything beyond that. This now becomes a situation where that's critical to this project, and we have to provide a fully engineered design for that intersection to address a problem which is, we're not using that now. There's a problem now. Who created the problem? Why aren't they addressing it themselves? But I've already said more than I intended to say, but I would like to have an opportunity for Mr. Michaud to respond, because I think that even if you take time to study this, I didn't want to leave the impression that there's merit to the objections that have been raised, because they've all been considered and they've all been dealt with. But if we could let him speak, that would be
Mr.
great.
Isham?
Thank you. For the record, Robert Michaud, I'm the managing principal of MDM Transportation Consultants. I've got a long history of doing projects here in Shrewsbury and to proposing and developing projects that have transportation solutions that actually work. This site, I compare it to Price Chopper at South Street that we did. Lakeway Commons, the former SPAG site, White City Plaza, Centec North, a number of projects where we've been challenged to look at how a site can function safely and efficiently. And I think, we're proud to stand by what we've done in the town. We think we've been successful and effective and responsible, and we've taken the same approach on this particular site. This site clearly has challenges as it relates to Lake Street that are pre-existing and are very much the subject of monitoring and impact from other developments, namely the Edgemere Plaza. There are literally hundreds of additional vehicles per hour that use Lake Street that were never contemplated to occur during the permitting process for that project. That project continues through its monitoring program, and we've closely tracked that to understand where that project is in the process of fulfilling its obligations to address its own impact. and ultimately are holding this project to the same standards of performance as that project would be for its own impact. And in that regard, we very, very closely discussed all of the technical issues that related to access and circulation with Mass DOT, and through the very exhaustive technical analyses that were submitted during the planning board process, all of which was subject to peer review, and found concurrence with Mass DOT on the approach that we've taken, to the point that we now have a very clean, what's known as a Section 61 finding that was issued through the state's environmental review process by Mass DOT that acknowledges that what you see now on a final plan is appropriate, does meet their operational and safety-based criteria and standards and expectations. And that, as Mr. McGoldrick had mentioned in the decision, is going to be itself subject to an extensive monitoring program, both before and after it's built, to understand its actual impact. And, you know, as a matter of belt and suspenders, the potential outcome of any monitoring of this particular site could, in effect, result in a change to the Lake Street driveway. You know, that could become an enter-only driveway. That could be designed to restrict left turns. All of those were on the table when we discussed that with Mass DOT. Mass DOT very clearly articulated to us their desire to have the Lake Street driveway as a full access driveway. They were unequivocal in that. They did not express negativity, as was represented by Mr. Fiore, on the Route 20 driveways. We never received any negative feedback from Mass DOT on what we originally proposed. They had a strong preference that we not allow left turns on Route 20 because of the potential, either perceived or real delays and complications to left turn vehicle movements in particular. That would have related to, for instance, tractor trailer making a left turn during a peak hour. We reacted to that by providing physical restriction of those types of movements on Route 20 based on the consultation with DOT, and that was a positive outcome. In terms of technical analysis and what we've submitted to the planning board, we did an exhaustive assessment of all alternative access means, circulation patterns, and the effect of those. Again, all subject to peer review. There's nothing in the technical analysis that we've submitted and that was reviewed that indicated that there would be a safety problem or an operational problem on Lake Street or at any one of the driveways to this site. Case in point, as Attorney O'Neill had mentioned, this is a facility of convenience. Most of its traffic will be passed by related traffic that's already traveling through that intersection today. 80 to 90%, 8 to 9 of 10 trips that would be generated by this will be to or from the Route 20 corridor directly and will have nothing to do whatsoever with Lake Street. Lake Street signal is not an issue in the morning, when we do expect there to be somewhere in the order of 40 to 60, perhaps a little more, about a vehicle a minute that would be making a left turn from this site onto Lake Street. There's ample capacity for that. It's not unduly affected by vehicle queuing. There's very little delay associated with that movement. In the afternoon and Saturday midday hours, which is when the supermarket in particular at Demoulas is at its highest levels of activity, queues do occur on Lake Street, and we've acknowledged that and studied them in all of our filings. During those particular hours, the effect that this project has, its reliance on Lake Street, is at its lowest levels. And there will be ample capacity for the number of vehicles that we expect would even choose to use Lake Street, most likely as part of a linked trip to the Demoulas property as a practical matter. And that's a known characteristic of these types of sites, is that they become part of what's known as a linked trip. On the way to or from grocery shopping, you may decide to get gas or get a car wash, for instance. So there is a synergy that exists between this project and Edgemere Plaza, and it's a positive one, not a negative one. So in the end analysis, what we've proposed, what has been reviewed by Mass DOT, what has been reviewed and commented on by peer reviewer, is an optimal set of access solutions that will also be subject to monitoring over time to modify, if necessary, or if at all, any unforeseen issues that could occur at the site. You know, it's physically not possible for trucks, for instance, to travel through the site to get to Lake Street. We've designed it purposely that way. We know that if someone wants to go west, who's coming out of the site, they have an option to go right to get to the left turn lane. There's no prohibition on a U-turn at that signal. The designer of record sits in this room at the company's VHB. They designed that. There are U-turns that happen there today, and they are likely to continue tomorrow, whether related to this site or not. So we stand very firmly behind what is currently proposed and feel very confident that, subject to monitoring, that even in the case where changes were necessary, that there are abilities to address any unforeseen issue should it arise after the opening of the site. This is not a destination site. People will use discretion on the ease and efficiency in which they can get to and leave this facility. If it's that difficult, patterns change, and we know that from studying other facilities just like this in the Commonwealth. So we're very confident with what the analysis says. I'm confident in what we're putting forth as part of an access solution. It's not inconsistent with what we've done successfully in several other very high-profile locations here in Shrewsbury. And I'd be glad to answer any specific technical questions that this board might have.
Thank you. Any technical questions at this point? Dave?
Not right away.
No, I know.
Yeah.
That's review.
Okay, thank you. I think we're good for now. Thank you.
The only other thing I would say is that if at any point in this process, and it sounds like it may go on for a bit, the board feels the need, I mean, we can come back and do a full planning board presentation to you with the civil engineer, with traffic, with graphics, the whole 9 yards. And if you feel the need, we're hoping obviously that you won't, but if you do, we'd like to have an opportunity to do that.
Okay,
I might just add one thing, Chair, if it's okay.
sure.
And that is the whole premise of what was shown conceptually for improvements on Lake Street really was driven by a question and a desire, even at the Mass DOT level, to understand what, if any, land could or should be acquired on this particular site property that would affect and allow for a longer-term solution. We are well aware and we understand that Demoulas, as in its ongoing monitoring for its own project, has been subject to the same question at Mass DOT. What needs to be done to offset your individual project impact? What does that look like? We were not privy to any concept plans of the magnitude that we presented that had been previously prepared, whether by Demoulas or others. So we took it upon ourselves to identify conceptually what those could be so that we could understand how this project could become part of a longer-term solution, not as a project to be undertaken individually by this developer, but rather for this developer to contribute meaningfully to, so that you could take a step forward in implementing what should be done as a longer-term improvement. So I wanted to be clear to the board that under no circumstance did we ever represent or intend to represent that the conceptual plans that were identified were intended to be a solution that was needed or necessary to support this individual project. It was a part of a collaborative approach to understanding what this developer could do to affect and facilitate a longer-term plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to be heard on this matter? Okay. So the pleasure of the board. Do we have enough information to proceed with a vote? Do we want to continue? Fran?
Respectfully for what Chris said, there's a lot of information. I wasn't part of this. I'm new to the board, right? Megan's new to the board. I gotta digest a lot of this stuff before I can do, my first glance is, but that's not
There's a lot.
there.
I agree.
Okay,
I'm looking for continuance is what I would do.
yeah.
I'm ready to opine, but happy to defer to colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, I can always share opinion, but I'm happy to continue at this time.
I feel like that is the prudent thing to do, given the amount of information that we have to continue. That would be my vote.
I agree.
Madam Chair, may I respond to a couple of the comments that were made at this time?
Is that,
Defer to the chair.
if you can make them brief, please?
I will make
that would
them
be
very
great.
brief.
Thank you.
3 points, and thank you for the time. It was mentioned that a lot was done, every concern was addressed. There are no merits to our arguments today. That's not true, and I encourage you to go back and look at the entire record. Watch the videos, look at all the papers that were submitted. The fact of the matter is that nothing changed in the site design over the course of many months after that left turn option was removed, really. There were some additions to prevent illegal left turns, which is great, but nothing to address the two concerns that Mr. Michaud had addressed to this board a year before. If you go back and look, the letter from Bowman, the most recent one, I believe, is March 2025. That blocked the box already existed at that time. Bowman still had the concerns. The planning board had the concerns, which is why it continued and continued and continued month after month with hearings. But nothing was ever addressed with a solution. It's almost as if enough time had passed that they said, okay, we don't know what else to do with this at this time. But that doesn't mean that the bylaw conditions were met. The last thing I'd say, and it's not a personal attack on Mr. Michaud at all. We've had a number of times of shaking hands in the hallway, and we probably will tonight. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not a traffic engineer. I wasn't educated to do that. I can't give you the analysis other than making arguments. Mr. Michaud is a traffic engineer. He made the representations to this board a year ago about what would happen if that left-hand turn was eliminated, and it was. I don't know how to explain why he said those things, but he said them, and he's the qualified one. So tonight he says to you, we've done a lot in the town, we're proud, we stand behind it. Almost, there's a saying in the law, the ipse dixit statement, and it comes up a lot with experts. It means, because I said so. It's the way it is because I said so. Well, tonight he's telling you, it's gonna work because I said so. We've done a lot here. Look at our reputation, look at our past history. We say it'll work, it'll work. If that's the case, how come he said this, something different a year ago to this board? That they needed that left turn, because otherwise people are going to go through Market Basket's parking lot or clog up Lake Street. So it's not personal at all. I ask you to look at the record entirely and appreciate your attention to it and your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So if it is in agreement with the board, I would like to ask for a
Motion to continue?
motion to continue the hearing to a date certain, which would be,
December 22nd.
yes, please.
I will move to continue the matter concerning 193 Hartford Turnpike to December 22nd at 6 PM.
Second?
I, second,
Okay. All in favor?
I,
So moved. Thank you.
sorry. Got my seconds and my eyes mixed up.
It's all good, right?
Madam Chair,
You need a short break, Fran?
is it time? It is.
Sure. Let's take a short break.
It's time, please.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back in 5 minutes.
My bladder.
All right, next on the agenda. This is a continuation from the October 27th, 2025 meeting. Here, the appeal of 409 South Street, CPC Land Acquisition Company LLC for a comprehensive permit under Mass General Law 40B, Section 20 to 23, to permit the construction of a 196-unit multifamily residential development. Good evening, and if you could state your name for the record?
Good evening, Chris Copeland with Criterion Development Partners, the applicant. With me tonight, I have John Smolak and Vaughn, our attorney.
Could you speak up, sir?
Yep.
Ma'am,
Sorry.
could you ask him to speak up, please?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Do I need a microphone?
That might help.
I have John Smolak Attorney Smolak from Smolak and Vaughn, Phil Cordero from Allen and Major, civil engineer, and Robert Michaud from MDM Transportation. If you recall, last time we were here on October 27th, today is our third hearing before the board. Thank you for your time. We come before you with no response to the sewer pier from Weston and Sampson because the Chestnut Street pump needs to be improved before we can put our project online. So we don't have a formal response to that. I'm not sure we needed one. We have 26 civil responses that we provided in peer responses last week. And we have 23 traffic responses that Mr. Michaud can go over. The headline issue as of today seems to remain the perhaps the sidewalk issue and where to have sidewalks go to and from and the safety concerns of that. So we're happy to have that dialogue. We also hope in some regard to wrap up, if we can, any of the technical review and comments tonight and have a measure of framework that we can take into next hearing to discuss, hopefully maybe waivers, conditions, things like that. If the board would have the will to do that, that would be great. We're happy to work within a framework reasonable for a set of conditions that allows us to proceed, perhaps if we need to, even back to a select board that squares up anything that needs to happen with our development agreement that we have with the town. We're happy to do that too. So we don't have a formal presentation tonight, but we do have and can put on the screen any of our peer responses. We can start with civil or traffic at the board's will. We're happy to do that tonight.
Whatever you have right up there is fine.
Let me share my screen. So, start with civil first.
Sure.
Phil, come on up.
For the record, Phil Cordero from Allen and Major Associates. As a summary to where we left off, Mr. Copeland obviously did a great job from the last meeting. We were tasked to continue our work with Mr. Walsh at Graves Engineering. So we did go through the effort. He had put together a detailed peer review letter, which we went through and provided responses one by one so the board could see what had been changed on the plans. I don't know if it's coming up.
Is that coming up? I guess, let me see what's up. I guess let me stop sharing. Share it again. Try it this way.
There we go. So I'll go through the comments that we did provide responses to. I'll try to focus in on the more consequential ones as opposed to really some of the typographical or administrative notes. And I'll abridge, obviously, the correspondence between both myself and Mr. Walsh. On our site planning, he had asked that we provide a designation of where 2 package delivery spaces would be located at the mid-rise buildings. That was simply a labeling note. So we have 1 space at each of the mid-rise buildings. Obviously, at the Village Flats, those operate more as a small-scale residential, so those spaces are generally open to everybody. And I see Chris has the plan up, and he's going to highlight. So that's exactly right. Thank you. Package and rideshare space right at the amenity entrance, and a similar space exists on the opposite building on the other side. Mr. Walsh noted about parking spaces. The plans need to be revised to clearly identify the locations of the 283 parking spaces is the general gist of the comment. What we failed to note, or Mr. Walsh failed to pick up on, is the parking spaces associated with the village flats. There are garage spaces inside each of those buildings. So those have been clearly labeled and annotated as such on the plans, and we think he'll find that very straightforward. On one of our sheets, please note the electrical, telephone, and cable conduit connections for buildings 5 and 6. Those have very simply been added. Those will be subject to final refinement and detailing as we walk through the process with Selco on the utility conduit layout. Plans need to include names and addresses of abutters located adjacent to the property. This is a requirement of the zoning bylaws, and he cites the section. We've simply added those, all of the names as they exist on the tax assessor rolls. Similarly, the plans need to show property lines and existing buildings within 200 feet of the subject property to the northwest and southwest. We have done that based on digital aerial photographs. We digitized in property lines. No new site survey, but it's hopefully enough for the board to identify where adjacent structures are to the best of our ability. Under stormwater management rules and regulation, the plans are missing telephone numbers of the owner and the applicant on the plans. We certainly added those to the cover sheet of the plans and the documents as requested. We also note that Graves Engineered had put in place that this information could be deferred to a condition and be provided on the final construction plans. We've obviously included it at this stage, but should the board wish more information to be provided, we'll make sure that that is in place for the final plans that will come in front of the board prior to construction. Similarly, under comment 7, the zoning bylaw requires that we put a construction sequence on the plans where we will disturb more than 1 acre of land. We have added that on the erosion and control plan to give a general step-by-step itemization as to how this project would be developed in terms of the earthwork, the foundations, general cuts to fills. But what we also asked for in the letter is the opportunity to further detail that construction sequencing as we get closer to construction. We always look to put information on the plans in a very schematic fashion at this stage, but as we engage more and more consultants and we know more and more about the project and how the project will ultimately be built, we will further refine that. And should the board want that additional information, similarly to the comment above, would provide it as we get closer to construction in a construction management plan, which will be a more wholesale document than the notes on the erosion plan. Comment 8, the operation and maintenance plan is missing stormwater management system owners and emergency contacts. And then he goes on to note that this could also be a future condition. We have added that information as appropriate, but again, final management details for the O&M for the stormwater management systems can be integrated into those final documents. Comment 9 is really is an administrative note. GEI has no comments relative to the waivers. We provided no responses. That seems appropriate. GEI under comment 10 did make note about their analysis relative to the number of parking spaces provided on site. 283 spaces, whereas 294 would be required in strict compliance with the zoning bylaw. We did speak about this in great detail during our last meeting with the board, is that we are collectively relying upon the information that we know about the tenancy, that is the applicant, our experience with site management for a project of this nature, and MDM Transportation's familiarity with a project of this type. And we as design professionals are obviously noting that we believe that the adequacy of the parking is sufficient as proposed. One of the new bits of information that we did provide in our comment response back is the Metropolitan Area Planning Council has done some independent studies for some regional parking management, and we wanted to make sure we cited that for the board. Not in exacting detail, of course, that information is publicly online, but generally noting that projects of this size, the average parking demand is about 1.4 spaces per unit, whereas we're providing 1.8 on this site, just below what the zoning bylaw requires, but well above what MAPC generally recommends. Go ahead.
1.44.
Excuse me, 1.44. I apologize. Thank you. We're providing 1.44. MAPC advises generally it's 1.2 utilization. Thank you for clarifying. Comment 11, GEI made a general note about hydrology computations, found them in order. We agree, thank you. Comment 12, he makes a note about some coordination within our HydroCAD planning model and adding some additional schematic information on how the buildings will be drained into the stormwater collection vaults that we're proposing. We have modified that information on the site plans to give a general indication as to how the roof drains from each of the buildings, specifically the village flats, will be collected and drained into our subsurface system. On the rear of the village flats, though, because this board may recall, we do have a walkout on that lower level. So GEI's comment is, how will we drain those if they come out 10 feet lower than the rest of the site? So the design model that we put forth is the lower half of the village flats could drain to the surface, and they could drain sheet flow down the slope towards the wetland area. Our models take that into account because of the topographic change out here on the site. Comment 13 was clarification and coordination on our outlet control structures for our drainage systems. Our response is we've simply coordinated that with our HydroCAD model. Comment 14, compliance with the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook standards is reasonable as noted below. No response to 14. However, but under number 15, GEI goes on to note we provided some soil testing back in 2021. This board or the previous version of this board may remember that an application that we were involved in was promoted here on the site. So we relied on that soil data in putting together our stormwater management systems. The exact location of the test pit is not directly underneath the stormwater field as we're providing on this plan. So what we're requesting through the board is we have reasonable familiarity relative to the drainage and relative to the soil condition, but the opportunity to confirm the groundwater location in the field position as we near towards construction. And we have better opportunity to get out and disturb the site. Should we find that anything requires changes, we would have to review them with this board, should there be wholesale changes to the site plans. Comment 16, in the O&M plan, the level spreader needs to identify a large rainfall event. We've simply done that by saying our large rainfall event is 3.25 inches over a 24-hour period, which is a 2-year stormwater standard. So we've annotated that in the report. Comment 17 is a suggestion to add a guardrail on the south side of the parking area. We have agreed, we have added that guardrail. It is denoted on the plan. Similarly, comment 18 is about fall protection fencing on retaining walls. We had some additional fencing between garages 2 and 3 adjacent to a slope that have been added. And then additional fencing, we've asked for the opportunity for the guardrail to be used as that fall barrier. It's a visual barrier to denote that there's a difference and there's a slope. So we have those measures in place on the final plans. Comment 19 is an important one about the retaining walls along Chestnut and South Street. And GEI is recommending that these walls be reviewed for stability, not only for erosion protection. We note that, we agree with that. These walls will be complex in their nature because there's a lot of topographic change here. We will bear the requirement of making sure these walls are fully detailed, designed, documented, both between ourselves, geotechnical engineers, and structural engineers as part of the due course. They would be relegated to a building permit given their height. So we have to go through that level of review and would ask the board to simply note that, and we will put it through its paces and return with that design when appropriate. Comment 20 is a note regarding acceptable fill materials, and we incorrectly noted a StormTech 740 chamber system. That was an erroneous detail that we've removed from the plans. We've filled that in with retain-it structures, which are concrete stormwater vaults. that's what we intend to use here. Comment 21 is they make note, GEI makes note about the grading relative to slope stability. Similar to the retaining wall comment above, we bear the responsibility of working with our geotech engineers to ensure the slopes are buildable and stable as shown on the plans. And we will continue to do so as we advance these plans from the preliminary comprehensive permit stage up through and complete construction documents. Comment 22 noted several inconsistencies on our drainage pipe structure tables. We have coordinated that information between the plans, the HydroCAD, and we have updated the permit tables accordingly, or the pipe tables accordingly. Comment 23, the plans need to show dimensions of parking areas, space, width, length, and aisles. Those have all been added to our layout and materials plans to confirm the dimensions that we've addressed with the board. Comment 24, we had an emergency access gate detail on our plans. We do not need fire access gates on this site. That detail has been removed. Lastly, the plans need to show the location of the snow storage areas. And we have added designations on the plans to be used for routine removal and stacking of snow. These areas are preliminary and subject to further review. The intent is that snow is not plowed in areas that will impede sight lines for safe vehicular travel into or out of the site, and that has been noted as such on the plan. So snow piling remains low, there's no landscaping, adequate sight distances are met. But perhaps more importantly, we identify that in the event designated snow storage areas reach capacity, it shall be removed in accordance with the Mass DEP snow removal policy, which is included in the O&M package that was provided during the permit submission to the board. And then lastly, GEI notes Shrewsbury Department of Public Works Water and Sewer Division will review the proposed water and sewer connections. For that, we have no relative note back to GEI. But we do note that Weston and Sampson had provided some commentary on the site design. The comments, as applicable, have been addressed on the plans. Those included providing some additional details for cleanouts, drop manholes, and also providing sewer profiles, very administrative-based information. It did not change the design intent. Those have been provided on the revised documents and remain in place. As Chris mentioned, obviously, we remain committed to working with the town on the sewer pump station improvements that now need to be done and the timing and coordination relative to that as it relates to this project. So those are in place. And then lastly, not uniquely identified on the particular letter dated by us on November 11, we did, as the site engineers, envelop some comments received by the town's traffic consultant, which were to include a note on the site plans where bike racks are located. So we do have those on the revised site plan. We also, they made note similarly on the high turnover spaces, the 2 parking spaces. Those are also noted on the site plan. So we captured the site-related comments relative to the traffic engineering peer review comments in one wholesale swoop. And thank you, Chris, for showcasing the changes, but the bike racks, as he's highlighting on the plan, are there, and we can, of course, point through and walk through if the board so desired this evening. So that's what's transpired since our last meeting with the board, and I'm happy to walk through any of the technical matters on site engineering if you would like.
All right.
I'm all set.
Ann?
I don't have any questions right now.
Okay.
I think I'm good.
Fran?
I have no comment, madam.
Thank you. Chris, the annotation was very helpful.
Thank you.
Couldn't have done it without it.
Yeah, it was good.
True.
Oh, very helpful.
Thank you.
Like the color green, too. You can see what we
Christmas.
need to see.
Christmas green.
There we go.
See, it's
There
Grinch
we go.
green.
Traffic.
Traffic. Thank you. Move on.
You again.
I am. I'm here again. Thank you, Chair and board members. Again, Bob Michaud with MDM. I will not readdress some of the issues that Phil just mentioned. I'll focus strictly on traffic-related commentary issued by Bowman. We'll take it point by point. So parking obviously was a fundamental
question in this case, and we've been able to identify not only the industry standard 85th percentile demand characteristics, which are almost identical to what the supply is for the site, but we've also looked at operational sites as examples of what to expect on an average and an 85th percentile basis. So we've got 8 very specific examples of projects and their number of units and parking usage that we've surveyed over time, and what it shows is a high correlation to the industry standard, but slightly lower than the industry standard. Phil had mentioned earlier the MAPC parking studies that are out there that further corroborate that parking trends are in a downward trend on a per unit basis. It's not unusual for projects like this to have parking supply numbers that are between 1.25 and 1.4. So we fit very neatly on the higher side of that particular range. So we're comfortable that what's being proposed for parking not only meets the 85th percentile standards that ITE would suggest are needed, but also, more importantly, empirically, are very well correlated to what we see at built projects here locally. There was question relative, this is comment 2, it really had to do with making sure that the sightline standards that we've applied appropriately represent the speeds that are measured on the adjoining streets. In particular, the proximity of the driveway on Chestnut Street, which is 240 feet away from where South Street is. We calculated the sightline standards on the basis that turning vehicles coming onto Chestnut Street would be going an average of about 15 miles an hour or so, right? That's pretty typical of movements onto a side street. But we've done a sensitivity analysis, if you will, that suggests that even if you were to travel at 30 miles an hour turning onto Chestnut Street, that there would be sufficient sight line. We would hope that people don't make turns going 30 miles an hour, but there is ample sight line if that does occur. Comment 3 related to something that we missed, frankly, in documenting, which was the Route 9 at Chestnut Street crash rate. We now incorporate that into the response, which indicates that essentially the crashes there are well below averages. So there's really no safety deficiency there per se. Comment 4 raised question as to whether or not short-term safety-related improvements had been implemented at the South Street and Route 9 intersection. MDM actually had prepared a road safety audit years ago, and it was associated with the Centec North project that identified a series of actions that were recommended through a group review, if you will, team review of that location. And we're pleased to report that all of the low-cost, easily implementable, safety-based improvements that were identified in the road safety audit have in fact been implemented there. So that was good news. Comment 5, rather, again, related to the sightline issue that I just mentioned that has been addressed. We will further point out that on the site plan, those sightline triangles are now identified, and in every case, the applicable sightline criteria are met, not only at the South Street intersection and Chestnut Street, but at the driveway itself on Chestnut Street. Comment 6, there's a series of comments that really didn't require a response. So we go on to site-generated traffic, which is comment 9. Bowman correctly points out that the nature of the use is that it's a low-rise development as it's categorized within Institute of Transportation Engineers criteria. The originally submitted traffic report, which was prepared really in the earlier stages of the project, had estimated a mid-rise product, which is 3 stories and above. There are, in this case, we're talking about, essentially 2-story type structures. And as a result, we've rerun the trip generation. It's essentially the same during weekday morning peak hours, very little difference. The evening peak hours does have a slightly higher number of trips associated with it. So we've taken that adjusted trip number and analyzed it again through the modeling. And it shows very little difference, frankly, between what was originally submitted. The end analysis shows that Every one of the locations that was studied operates at an acceptable operating standard, a level of service D or better. Frankly, at Route 20 and South and Green Streets, that's actually at a level of service B. So there's really no material difference in impact from what was originally studied. They correctly pointed out that the intersection at Route 20 and South Street was recently retimed by Mass DOT. And we now properly reflect that in the analysis. Again, it's really not much different than what was originally published, ample capacity. In fact, there's improved capacity on the South Street approaches relative to where that same signal was a year ago. So it was a positive outcome. As we then turn to transportation demand management, the question was whether or not alternative transportation modes via WRTA exists. WRTA does operate what they call via WRTA, which is a dial-up system where if you need to get a ride to, say, Westboro, Northboro, you can do that by calling them and arranging a ride. And this is in the service area for that particular service. Site access and circulation, I think Phil covered that principally, but there were 2 points, and they related to project-related mitigation. Question was whether or not an always stop would be appropriate at the intersection of South Street and Chestnut Street. We did look at the warrant criteria for that. The warrant criteria are not met, so it's not a recommended action. And as shown in the most current version of the site plan, there will be a significant improvement to the alignment of Chestnut Street and South Street. It will be a much more traditional alignment at 90 degrees and is designed specifically to accommodate swept path movements by school buses and fire apparatus that would need to use Chestnut Street, and it's been tested for that type of geometry. It also, of course, incorporates a significant pedestrian accommodation across Chestnut Street with ADA-compliant design elements. The question that was raised during peer review was whether or not this is an improvement that would be implemented in whole by the applicant. What are the roles, right? Who's doing what? Is this a town-related project? Is it an applicant project? This is an applicant-funded, designed, and implemented improvement. Which leaves us to the last point on mitigation, which really relates to the sidewalk improvements along South Street. And this is a point that was discussed preliminarily at the last hearing. We've been in process of looking at design aspects of sidewalks from Chestnut Street to Route 20 and from Chestnut Street to the existing terminus of the sidewalks on the west side of South Street. There are design challenges associated with implementing a full sidewalk design to Route 20. Mass DOT, as the board may realize, is in process of redesigning and expanding the Route 20 corridor. There are utilities that are being relocated as part of that whole process that complicate the alignment of any potential sidewalk connection to Route 20. There are grade challenges, of course, retaining wall structures, et cetera, that also make that challenging. To the north of Chestnut Street, concern raised by at least one abutter was the safety aspects and the orientation of any potential sidewalk on that side. We've looked at options for sidewalk extension on the west and east sides of South Street. We believe that there may be a solution on the east side of South Street, still subject to ongoing, survey and technical analysis. And I think what we're suggesting to the developer, the applicant in this case, is that there be a contribution made to affect both the design and the implementation of a sidewalk system, whether that includes something only to the north of Chestnut Street or somewhere to the south toward the Route 20 corridor is something that really needs to be hammered out, frankly, with the town. But the idea is that there would be a contribution, as is the case in other projects in town, toward what I would call a transportation improvement fund, and that fund would essentially allow for the design and implementation of appropriate sidewalk improvements in and around this area that are consistent with what we've outlined conceptually on the aerial diagram that's on the board. And that concludes our response to peer review. I believe that we've comprehensively addressed each and every point, but we'll defer to any final commentary that your reviewer has. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave?
I think you briefly mentioned that MassDOT is looking at redoing this portion of Route 20. And I guess could you just give a little bit more color on that? I know
Sure.
that they have like a 10-foot wide multi-use like bike walk path, and how that plugs into the sidewalk equation.
Yeah, that's a great question. The Route 20 corridor improvement goes from South Street to Route 9. It's an extensive enhancement, not only from a highway perspective, moving traffic more efficiently, but it also integrates, as you point out, the shared use path component on the north side of Route 20. That shared use path essentially will terminate under that design at South Street. In the northeast corner of the intersection, that's the site side of the intersection, if you will. What MassDOT currently has designed is a relocation of 2 utility poles with guy wires on that corner. There will be a widening of that corner radius so that it facilitates turns onto South Street as you're traveling westbound on Route 20. There are significant grades in and around that area where those utilities are being relocated. There are drainage structures. There's a lot going on there in that corner that really present, in our view, a significant challenge to providing a direct connection to the shared use path along South Street. On the west side of South Street, the right-of-way literally comes up to the edge of the roadway, right? There's no available public way to implement a sidewalk on the west side of South Street. So there are challenges to how to connect portions of South Street to that multi-use path, that shared use path. Those technical challenges won't be solved overnight. It's going to be subject to an extensive evaluation that requires detailed survey, consideration of alternatives, consideration of those utility impacts. There's no easy answer. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was really just looking for color on the whole thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but MassDOT is looking at increasing the number of lanes as you're traveling south on South Street towards Route 20 for that light?
Yes, there'll be an additional lane on the approach right at the signal.
Yeah.
That was actually identified during the evaluation of the Centec North property, and that's since been integrated into the MassDOT plan. So there'll be a significant capacity enhancement for that South Street approach. That'll be an additional lane, but there's never been a plan for sidewalk enhancements along South Street. They're not contemplated them in the MassDOT design, and there are challenges that I just mentioned as it relates to right-of-way and topography and utilities.
Okay, thank you.
Ann?
Nothing at this time. Thank you for that presentation.
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Fran?
Thank you for the presentation. I don't have any comments right now.
Thank you.
Chris?
If I can, I just wanted to add some of the discussion that we've had with abutters in relation to the traffic as well here. Just add a little bit more flavor. So, actually, could you pull that slide?
Sorry.
That was actually a really good slide to use.
It's just
So one of the concerns that was raised is existing conditions in terms of high speeds on southbound traffic on South Street. And, there's extensive concerns, existing issues where cars have gone off the road into the applicant's front yard, or sorry, into the abutter's front yard. So it is an existing condition. There is a history of it, albeit over a period of time. We met with this abutter and discussed, in addition to the DPW director and the highway superintendent, to discuss some kind of concerns around there and better understand it. One of the things that we'll be asking of the applicant is to review essentially that curve. There is, I think, as an existing condition, there's an obligation of the town to take on some mitigating efforts. Existing, there are flashing, if you've driven that section, there's the flashing curve signs that have helped mitigate in some fashion, although they need some additional maintenance to occur. But we'll be looking, primarily, I think, as we talk about this potential sidewalk and the location of that crossing, if there's additional contributions to traffic calming that can be done on that side. Again, I think it needs to be balanced with the project and understand that that is an existing condition. But in terms of if we're putting in some kind of a crosswalk or sidewalk, if that infrastructure has some traffic calming in relation to that, I think that'd be an important piece to look at, whether that's moving the crosswalk up to the start of that curve. But again, we can look at, I can suggest things, but I'm not a traffic engineer, so we'll be asking the applicant's traffic engineer to just evaluate, if that can be incorporated into the design. And then, certainly the town would take some obligation of implementation of those solutions. But in addition to that, we're working with the highway department to look at, what other things that the town can do to mitigate that existing condition. So that's an ongoing issue that we're evaluating. I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. It was included in the correspondence as well, so.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone, this is a public hearing, is there anybody that wishes to be heard on this matter? You'd step up, state your name for the record. If you could stick to topics of tonight, that would be.
Yeah, David Singer, 400 South Street. A couple of different questions and a couple of different things. As far as snow removal, if it's supposed to be trucked out, where is it going to be trucked out to? So we just want to be sure that it's not kind of right off the property and, on the surrounding areas there. When Mr. Michaud talked about the left turn and ample sight line onto Chestnut Street, was that a sight line coming down South Street that you can see cars on Chestnut Street, or was that a sight line that you can see cars coming up from Route 20 to take a left turn onto Chestnut?
Right, yeah, through the chair. So the sight lines that we've looked at include a vehicle traveling down Chestnut Street, coming to a stop position and looking toward Route 20 left and looking toward Route 9 right. All right, so this would be a stop position where you need to make a decision as a motorist to select an appropriate gap to be able to make your maneuver, and for that movement to be viewed by an approaching vehicle so that that approaching vehicle had sufficient time to be able to react and stop if necessary. Because we're realigning the intersection of Chestnut and South Street, there's an opportunity to ensure that when you're at that stop position, that those sight lines are clear and visible, not only by the motorists that stop, but by, again, the vehicles that are approaching.
So it's the sight line was from a car coming off of Chestnut onto South Street.
Correct, but also for a vehicle that's approaching Chestnut Street from Route 20 traveling north and from South Street traveling south from the Route 9 side. So we've looked at those sight lines as well. So that those standards are met in both cases.
So this would be something possibly to do with the grading, because I can tell you as a butter who has clear view of the intersection, still today, cars need to jut out onto South Street to get a clear view of cars coming from Route 20, which then forces cars coming from Route 20 over the center line, traveling north onto South Street. There's really an awful lot of, beepings, and, you just look out, cars maneuvering. You have this kind of same situation as cars come around the curve, coming up from Route 9, heading towards that area where you get a lot of crossover where people cut over the yellow line, so it's a stretch. So I'm not really sure what the standards are.
Can I make a quick comment? We are cutting down that grade to put an exposed foundation and a sign at the base of that. So that's coming down.
Right, yeah, I know we talked about that, so I'm just not sure how that's gonna help the sight line coming up from Route 20 and the steep grade that comes, up from there, because cars just appear and
just
disappear.
the actual road.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, coming up, it's still a steep entryway, and cars, once they start to get to the top of that little incline coming from Route 20, they really start to pick up,
Right here.
speed.
Okay.
Right, yeah, right, coming up from Route 20,
Yeah.
exactly. Another issue that's just become kind of a new issue, this we talked about with Mr. Goldrick, there's been more truck traffic, 18-wheeler traffic coming both directions on Route 20. As trucks try to take the turn onto Chestnut Street, they'll get blocked there because if there's a car coming down Chestnut Street, right now that 18-wheeler can't make that turn. So I've seen 18-wheelers just stopped on South Street. Cars have to now back up if they're waiting to take a turn. So there are turn issues as that site develops the UMass facility as to what it becomes. It seems like there's going to be an increased truck traffic there, and something that I had mentioned before, perhaps grading it down will be eliminate the problem. In wintertime, you get all sorts of vehicles turning onto Chestnut Street from both sides of South Street. That pretty much get stuck there, so that can create a problem in the winter. I was glad to hear the traffic report as far as sidewalks are concerned, and the east, west, and west side. I met with Mr. McGoldrick and Tim McInerney last week about the safety issues. I went back into history. We've been in this house since 1993. There are 18 property vehicle damage accident reports just alone in this, and that's when there's claimable insurance type of a thing. All of those accidents happen on the east side. Sometimes they hit our stone wall, and they end up on the west side. So I'm glad to see that that's happening. The crosswalk, Chris, if you could go back to the sidewalk drawing,
Oh, yeah, this one.
please.
I think it's this thing here. Yeah?
There simply cannot be a crosswalk here because you're coming off the curb. That's just far too dangerous. You have cars that are coming down this way. This would have to either be extended or put further out. I had mentioned to the developer, to Chris, there's walkways already on the property that, abut the UMass property and in between the, the dealerships. So there's already safe place to walk, take your bike, take your dog, and then cross further where the existing crosswalks, already exist. I think to encourage any type of pedestrian travel from here and really down to Route 20 is just inviting a problem. And a definition of accident is an unfortunate incident that happens unexpectedly or unintentionally, or an event that happens by chance or without apparent or deliberate cause. That would be none of those. It would be, everybody knows the dangers that exist there, and so I think that would open up some liabilities as well. Other than that, I think that kind of, covers things tonight, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that wishes to be heard? Hi. Chris, do you have some updates on how we would proceed?
So I think, so obviously there's still some open items in relation to some of the final traffic items and that, which I think is being worked through. So I think probably for the next meeting, covering the waivers and any additional items, I think most of the substantive traffic issues and substantive civil design has been discussed and provided, but again, we need those final reports from those peer reviews. So between that and then I think working with, in the interim with Bob Michaud in terms of some of the sidewalk design to see if that can be improved in terms of the traffic calming in the area. I think that would probably be the bulk of the information that I understand that we're still looking for. But again, if the board has anything else that they would like to see, I'm happy to coordinate that with the applicant as well.
Anybody have any comments or specific requests? I think we're good. Okay. All right. So we'd be looking for a continuation to a date specific of December 22nd.
I make a motion to continue the matter related to 409 South Street to December 22nd at 6 PM.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to our last continuation. It's to hear the appeal of 104 Main Street, Limited Commercial Business, the Quinn LLC, for a comprehensive permit to Mass General Law 40B, Section 20 to 23, to permit the construction of a 300-unit multifamily residential development. Good evening.
Evening, Madam Chair, members of the board.
Good evening. Could we state your name for the record, please?
Certainly, Mark Donahue from Fletcher Tilton on behalf of the applicant.
David Calhoun from Saxon Partners. I'm joined by Jack Levin, partners.
Bless you.
Clay Smook Architecture. We also have Phil Cordero from Allen & Major, and we also have Jeff Dirk from Vanessa Associates.
Good evening, everyone. Bless you.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Can you push the screen a little forward so we can see it a little better? Yeah,
Yeah, tilt it.
thank you. Much better, thank you.
Been watching those microphones walk up.
Yeah, I've been watching the same thing. All right.
Great, thank you. From the last meeting on the checklist of things to provide, we were asked to provide a depiction or a rendering of what the building would look like and some more color as to the so-called sky view that had been incorporated into the plans. We talked at the last meeting of the change in unit mix as a result of that common area being taken up to the 5th floor. We confirmed that those are all uploaded to the portal and are available to the board through that and are consistent with our presentation. But with your permission, I'll have Clay Smook, the architect of record, review with you the elevation or rendering of the building so you can have a better depiction of what it looks like from
Sure.
the side.
Sure, Clay Smook, Smook Architecture. So we developed this rendering to take a look at what it would look, now we're looking up towards the building, sort of at that middle finger piece that we have. Where what we've done is we've set back the building on the 5th story to create a fairly robust upper level deck with unobstructed views to Lake Quinsigamond. I know that Jack has tried to go out to the site a number of times to do an aerial shot of the Lake Quinsigamond with a drone, which apparently had some challenges.
It's a little windy.
Sort of like, early Saturn V rocket launches. So unfortunately, we don't have that view, but you'll have to use your imagination at that level. You'll have unobstructed views of the lake. So it basically follows the same sorts of, the architectural expression that we previously did. We just set back that upper 5th, what we kind of depict as an attic story. Thank you. Happy to take any questions on that.
Any questions from the board?
Not on that.
Everything? Okay. Oh, moving right along.
Thank you. Leading up to the last meeting that we had, there was a flurry of communication with regard to traffic, and we kind of deferred that at the last meeting. I think it might make sense, with your permission, to have Jeff Dirk just kind of summarize the information that's been submitted. And I know that your peer consultant is here also to see what remains as any open issues and discuss those and get direction from the board as to those. So with your permission, Mr. Dirk.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Jeffrey Dark with Vanessa Associates, the transportation consultants on the project. So I think, as our attorney had mentioned, we've had the opportunity to have back and forth with the town's peer review consultant with respect to the transportation analysis for the project. Most of the comments as they relate to our assessment were really dealing with a couple of areas. The first was to make sure that the project, as we've described it, specifically with regard to parking and the layout within the site, was consistent, as we've talked about in the traffic study, with the current site plan. So we've reconciled the parking numbers for the project so that now they're matching what the site plan was. There wasn't really a comment as to the adequacy of the parking. I think the adequacy of the parking was determined to be adequate. It was more just making sure, as we're speaking of the number of parking spaces, it was consistent with what was shown in the site plan. So we've reconciled that with your consultant. The next item had to do with what we look at in our future conditions analysis. We had gone through several projects that we had said, future development projects by others in both Shrewsbury as well as the adjacent communities that we've incorporated into our future traffic volume projections. Your consultant had identified a couple of projects, I think that were in West Boylston, that they'd asked us to look at or contact the towns surrounding communities to make sure that we have incorporated everything. We've since done that and provided the information and updated our future conditions analysis to make sure it was consistent with the incorporation of those other development projects by others. So I think your consultant is satisfied with that analysis that was undertaken. The next set of comments were dealing with the warehouse development at 142 Clinton Street, and what we were asked to look at is specifically with regards to the improvements and mitigation commitments that were associated with that project. As you might remember, our section of Main Street that we were looking at from the North Quinsigamond Avenue, Holden Street intersection, as well as the two intersections with the I-290 ramps, both of those locations have improvements that are associated with that development project. And then the other intersection down at Old Mill Road and Iretta Road also have improvements with that project. And so there was a request for an understanding of what is the status of that project, what is the status of the Mass DOT review of it, and when would those improvements be put in place as they relate to the timing for this project. So we provided some information as it relates to those improvements. At the signalized intersection with North Quinsigamond, the developer of the warehouse project is retiming that traffic signal. There's also some safety enhancements that they're going to be doing there. Those design plans have been prepared, have been submitted to Mass DOT. They're at the 25% design level is where they stand right now, but they're currently being reviewed by Mass DOT. At the interchange on Main Street, there's left turn lanes to support access to both of the ramp intersections. The developer of the warehouse project will be extending that left turn lane at the request of Mass DOT to make sure that the queue can actually be stored in that lane that exists there. So we provided some information on that. Those 25% design plans have also been submitted. And at the Old Mill Road intersection, the developer of that project is retiming that traffic signal. That's something you've also heard us discuss as a part of this project. The design plans for that project or the retiming have not yet been submitted. That's a town intersection, and so the design plans for that are following a different track than the Mass DOT plans, only because the town review process is not any more less rigorous, but the timing that it takes for those plans to be reviewed by the town is much less than what it takes to get through the Mass DOT process. So it's kind of bifurcated as we're dealing with the submissions of the plans. The Mass DOT submissions have been made, under review. We're waiting on making the submission to the town, but I think that'll follow a different track, as I said. As to the certainty of when those improvements will be taking place, we can't be certain that they will occur prior to a certificate of occupancy being requested for this project. We're optimistic that it will take place, but that project is dependent on them obtaining a tenant. So until such time as they have a tenant for that project, they're going to progress the design plans, but the construction actually won't take place until they've got a signed purchase and sale agreement for those to go forward. So as we've thought about this project and structuring the mitigation, we've really put it in a place where we're saying, to the extent that an occupancy certificate is sought for this project prior to those improvements being taken place, we will implement some improvements. Those will probably entail the signal retiming at both of the intersections to accommodate the additional capacity. So we've laid out kind of that thought process and the analysis that goes along with this. We've basically analyzed the intersections with and without the improvements for the warehouse project and demonstrated how, to the extent that the warehouse doesn't go forward, that traffic is obviously not there. And then we would have our project's traffic, and then we'd do those additional improvements to the extent that that work was not in place. So we've provided that information. The last set of comments really focus in on the mitigation commitments, and what your consultant has asked us to do is really flush out, what are we proposing to do as a part of our project? What does fair share mean as it relates to this project? As you've heard a lot of discussion about the applicant saying that we've made some recommendations of specific improvements. We've quantified those costs, and then we've said what the fair share allocation to this project would be, to the extent that that's something that the board would consider as it relates to the mitigation commitment. So we've provided that information. The fair share costs deal with a couple of specific areas. The first is the sidewalk construction along North Quinsigamond Avenue. As you recall, the town has a complete streets improvement project along North Quinsigamond Avenue. There's been discussion about financial contribution to extend that sidewalk so that it would continue northerly to basically where the project is, and then we're constructing a sidewalk along the frontage of the project. There are physical improvements at the North Quinsigamond Main Street, Holden Street intersection. We discussed in providing a right turn lane on the North Quinsigamond Avenue approach, reconstructing the signal. And there's also some safety improvements, and the safety improvements are basically two pieces. It's a road safety audit, and then the improvements that are recommended as a part of that. So we've quantified that, provided some fair share cost. As it relates to the interchange, I think we had mentioned at the initial traffic presentation, MassDOT does not currently have a plan in place even for the future and looking at improving that interchange. So what we've offered to do is work with the town to develop a grant application, basically a one-stop grant application for mostly mobility-related improvements, so sidewalk construction and other things through the interchange area. It would address safety, would address mobility, and could have some capacity enhancements, but that's something that we would work with the town to advance that type of a grant application, which is directly facilitated by having affordable housing on this location in proximity to the interchange. So there's a direct correlation between improvements along Main Street and this project in terms of its location itself. And then the last set of improvements, as I mentioned, was the Main Street, Old River Road, Old Mill Road intersection. And again, traffic signal timing, we talked about some options for that intersection, which we've since discounted because of the impact that it would have on the residential neighborhood in terms of recirculating patterns. And we provided a fair share cost estimate for what the improvements may be there. They're primarily focused around retiming of that intersection. So that was a summary of the responses that we have to those comments provided by your review consultant. I understand she's had a chance to at least look at them from a preliminary basis, and has indicated, at least from the standpoint of additional information relative to analysis, that the only additional thing that she may be suggesting, and certainly she can speak for herself, and I'm sure she will, deals with the interchange. The interchange, as we've analyzed it, it's something where we have a significant volume of traffic that's coming on and off of those highway ramps, and what we're showing is some vehicle queuing both on the ramps as well as along Main Street. There's a couple of analysis models that we've used that are simulating the flow of traffic through the interchange, and we've tried it a couple of different ways. We've arrived at a model that allows us to predict what the increase in queuing would be as a result of this project. So that allows us to provide to you some substantive information as it relates to how many cars are backed up there today and how many will be there after we construct the project. Discussions with your consultant suggest that there may be an approach that really is a hybrid approach where we actually go and measure the queuing on the ramps and measure the queuing on Main Street, take that analysis model and calibrate it to what we measure out there, which will give us another reading as to the impact of the project. And I think certainly to the extent that that's something that's desirable, we would work with your consultant to address that. That's a summary of kind of what we've done and my understanding of where we stand with respect to the peer review. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Dave?
Before I speak, Mr. McGoldrick, do you have any comment on that?
We have the traffic peer review, who I think can speak to the traffic as well. Maureen wants to.
Good evening, Maureen LePayton from Bowman Consulting. I would generally agree that all of our comments on the site plans themselves have now been addressed. The discrepancies in parking, some of the other signage for pedestrian crossings within the site have all been addressed. We received updated site plans regarding that. We do still have a couple of comments about the study area intersections, as Jeff had just pointed out, about the I-290 at Main Street intersections. They had updated their analysis using a different analysis tool called Sidra. Typically, that's reserved for roundabouts and not typically used for just regular unsignalized intersections. So we had planned on suggesting if a delay study could be done in the field to better quantify what the delays are on the existing highway off-ramps, use that information to calibrate the synchro models that were previously provided and have a better gauge of what the actual impacts may be from the project. If you recall, previously when I presented, the updated analysis that we had received had shown about 3,000 second delay for existing conditions, I think, on the ramp, which is, we know there's delays on that ramp, but not that long. And then for future conditions was showing errors. So it was a little difficult for us to just gauge what the impacts were, if any. So we plan on suggesting that just to have a better idea of what the impacts are, if there is any additional mitigation that could be needed directly as a result of this project. In terms of the sidewalk extensions on North Quinsigamond, there was some additional commentary provided on how the estimate was developed for that contribution that's proposed for the town. We did review that. I think we have a few comments just to make sure that it's consistent with the town's project plans, which show a 5-foot wide sidewalk and certain pavement and subbase thicknesses for that asphalt sidewalk. So it looked like the estimate might have been based off of a 4-foot wide sidewalk and potentially different pavement thicknesses. So would ask to take another look at that just to make sure it's consistent with what the town project has proposed. And then going back to our original comments, the timeline of the 142 Clinton Street project is not quite known, and how that may overlap with when the certificate of occupancy may be requested for this project if approved. And one of our initial comments was that this project may need to assume some of the recommended improvements from the 142 Clinton Street project should that timeline try to advance beyond or faster than the 142 Clinton Street project. And what's been presented to date doesn't quite answer those questions that we have still. At the Old Mill Road and Iretta Road, there's a fair share contribution proposed, but not necessarily actually implementation of those timing changes as part of this project. And for the Main Street at North Quinsigamond intersection, there's been several things proposed, all with a fair share contribution. However, there is a right turn lane that's needed for mitigation directly as part of this project. That should be in place prior to this project receiving a certificate of occupancy. This intersection does have a crash rate that's higher than the Mass DOT and District 3 rates, and would be concerned if there are not certain improvements in place, either from the 142 Clinton Street project or this project, that they may be compounded or exacerbated potentially from the additional traffic. So I think those questions and discussing the impacts again and roles and responsibilities and the timeline of everything with town staff are kind of the last couple of comments we have, is that they haven't really fully been addressed to date. So that's what we plan on commenting on. Or I apologize, I didn't finish my letter for tonight, but we're going to try and send it out tomorrow. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any additional comments before we move on? All good?
I mean, yeah, just that right turn lane from North Quinsigamond onto Main Street, I concur that, is critical. If 142 Clinton Street doesn't go at the pace that's projected, then, I mean, that has to be done.
Chris, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I think from our stance, I think as represented, I think the right turn lane from North Quinsigamond onto Main Street is going to be important to be included. I think that's something that can be done as a condition of approval, that the final plans show that improvement and that those be done prior to occupancy. In terms of the Iretta Road and that relationship to 142, similarly, I think that's a potential condition of approval. I think there is still some some workshop discussion around what those improvements that would entail, that I think we can have in between now and the board's next meeting with the traffic engineers to determine what is most appropriate for this project in relation to those. So, I know that there is some fair share cost contribution that's been suggested, and as Mr. Dirk represented, primarily related to the timing of the intersection that might help mitigate that in the near term prior to 142 Clinton Street's occupancy. Beyond that, I think I did want to point out a clarification in terms of the waiver discussion and the fees that are being requested to waive. At the prior meeting, I mentioned it was a magnitude of close to $4 million. It was clarified after that the request is for a portion, specifically just related to the affordable units and a 50% mitigation of the fees associated with those affordable units, so closer to $800,000. Regardless, the town stance remains the same in terms of our recommendation on the waivers. So.
And I have one more question on traffic. I'm just trying to fully understand, did any of the experts in the room indicate that MassDOT has no real desire to be redoing anything with the intersections on Main Street in the near term?
No, so MassDOT is certainly aware of this project and and this process unfolding. Typically, MassDOT will wait until local approvals are completed before they'll dive into more formal comments. So they're aware of it, and MassDOT certainly would be involved in a final design process of this. That said, certainly the state is looking favorably along housing initiatives. So what extent MassDOT will look at that roadway will be probably commensurate with that. So that said, again, we are encouraging the improvements to that intersection that make sense, and that's why we would be strongly encouraging, if not requiring, that right turn lane from North Quinsigamond on a MassDOT.
Okay.
But
So it'd be fair to summarize it as assuming the project goes forward, traffic impacts occur, and then additional studies happen, and then everything else happens after that? Like any potential changes to the intersections?
So I think, so similar to pretty much all of the other projects of any magnitude that we do, likely there would be a condition of approval that we would require post-occupancy monitoring of traffic, and that would contemplate mitigation. Again, I think with the improvements to the North Quinsigamond Ave intersection with Main Street, again, we'll work with the traffic engineers to determine what those slate of projects are, but that condition would then outline potential improvements. Any of that mitigation most likely would require MassDOT involvement as well. So again, as they work through that process, they'll go to MassDOT and depending upon that process, have to coordinate again with the town.
Okay.
If I might, it might be worth spending a few moments on this to try to clarify. We are supportive and are prepared to make a fair share contribution toward the improvement of the intersection at North Quinsigamond and Main Street. But it can't be a condition of being able to occupy the building that work be done. The applicant doesn't control the area. It's a MassDOT jurisdiction intersection. They have to authorize it. And that fair share is not 100% borne by this development. We've offered, the magnitude of it is in the materials that's been submitted to you. It's approximately a $310,000 present day cost, according to Mr. Dirk, who can explain where he comes from with regard to that. We provided the analysis as to what the contribution is of this project to other projects on the impact of the intersection. It has a fairly minor impact, and offered that certainly as a contribution. And as part of our overall discussion on the waivers, we have offered to greatly increase that to approximately 50% of the costs of construction to a transportation infrastructure fund with the town, to work with the town, other developers who are impacted, such as 142 Clinton Street and others, and MassDOT, to see the work happen. And we're committed to that fair share in that context of a full discussion of the waivers. But I want to be clear that we can't have a condition of approval that mandates that work be done in a MassDOT jurisdiction. I had something else. I don't know. Well, with regard to the traffic, if the concept is to try to finalize this in a working session, then we're supportive of that concept, to try to figure out exactly what that can be, to try to move this along in the timeline as presented. That does bring us back to the discussion that we had briefly at the last meeting with regard to waivers. You have Mr. McGoldrick's letter of the 18th with regard to waivers. And I think that, we're pretty much in concert on many of the substantive ones. The information, just for the record, with regard to the additional information with regard to the impact on headlights shining on properties on the opposite side of North Quinsigamond, has been submitted by Mr. Cordero. He's here if you want to review it again, but that's part of the record now. The work that's proposed in lieu of the retaining wall along North Quinsigamond Ave, where there's a sliver of land that's still owned by the town, or technically the water department. That plan as to what that work would constitute is in the plan set. It's plan sheet L102 in the latest plan set, the landscaping plan. Mr. Cordero's here and glad to review that in detail with you. So we've done that. We have not submitted yet because it felt like it was premature and presumptive of us to go to the Board of Selectmen and ask for an easement without knowing whether, your board even endorsed the idea or was prepared to vote for approval of the project. So we will do that, and certainly can see a condition of approval that we will request that easement and develop them in accordance with that plan sheet that I referred to. I think that brings us to a discussion of the waivers with regard to fees. As Mr. McGoldrick indicated, and to put in context, this was in my October 23rd letter, the total of the fees here for water and sewer connection fees and building fees are anticipated to exceed $3.9 million. Our waiver request is simply for a fair deal, like you are offering, you as a community, not you as a board. And I don't mean to impute that upon you, because the final decision is yours to support other affordable housing developments. And that is a partial waiver of those fees, 50%, as it relates to the affordable units only. So in the context of this particular development, it does constitute a waiver of approximately $822,000 over present fees. It would still result in the payment of more than $3.1 million of fees for the development as a whole. That was not the original request that was submitted when this application was filed. The original request was for a more comprehensive waiver of the fees. The developer's position has changed in light of the fact that this community has negotiated with 409 South Street, the Criterion Group, for a fee waiver structure on comparable situation, applying only to the affordable units, making specific reference to community benefits, off-site improvements being offered by that development. Consistent with that development in magnitude and scope are the community benefits that we've offered here and outlined in my October 23rd letter, which include the contribution to the complete street sidewalks, which includes a contribution for physically doing the work for improvements to Gouch Park, which is in the process of getting more concrete as to what it is. I know we got a memo today that I haven't had a chance to digest from DPW with regard to that. with regard to making the improvements for the sidewalk along the frontage and the contribution that I just referred to, well above our proportionate share with regard to traffic improvements for the area. So what we seek with regard to the waiver of the fees essentially is just a fair shake, which is what assumedly this board will follow the development agreement entered into with the Board of Selectmen and the folks from CPC. I'm glad to discuss.
Just one point for the board. Very, very early on in the process, actually at the Pell application process, and after our site visit, one of the requests of planning was for us to reduce the size of our units, in other words, the square footage of your apartments. And we did that, and we took almost 12% out of the building. The value of that change in real dollars, we just had to do it on a project up by Dartmouth Hitchcock up in Lebanon, New Hampshire, and I don't know if you have a copy of that appraisal, but just in round numbers, that was only a 250 unit project. It was between the appraiser, not us, came up with a value of between, I can't see it from here, but I believe it was roughly 1.5.
Correct, 1.5.
To a high value of 2.3. Preliminary estimates on this project would be much higher than that. So that change request that we agreed to, and we're not going back on it, we designed to it, has real value. And it was a big concession by us, and we just asked that the board, as you're deliberating, discussing the waivers, that you take into consideration. That was a tremendous community benefit in real dollars. We can give you a copy of that if you'd like to see it.
Just to clarify, 1.5 to 2.3 what?
Million
Million.
in real value.
And just for clarity, you reduced the size of the units, but you still remain at a 300 unit
Count.
project, is that correct?
Correct. But your whole income projections change differently, because what happens is, for example, Jack, you can probably walk them through it better than anybody. Do you mind?
Sure. Essentially, the original building plan was much higher square footage. So when we went and reduced the square footage, we were taking away common space in the units, such as the living room and bedrooms, but not necessarily like the development fee, the applications, things like that, and the expensive rooms, such as the bathroom and the kitchen, that have higher skilled labor, utilities, appliances, things like that, that really drive up the value. So based off that calculation, you're still renting the unit for the same dollar amount, but it becomes less square footage. So there's a little bit of savings from the square footage coming down, but you're basically at a loss from what it would be if it was a larger unit.
So, for example, you still have, when you build an apartment, the most expensive part of your apartment is your kitchen and your bathrooms. Those are the drivers. And so when all of a sudden you change the square footage of your apartment, the kitchen doesn't usually shrink, the bathrooms don't shrink because you have to be able to get people in and out of the bathrooms. Your hallways don't shrink. Your amenity space doesn't shrink. Just the area that you get to charge rent on shrinks, so you lose that income. So when you make that request, it's a big request, it's got real impacts to the project, and that's why, we made that concession. At that point, we thought we were getting full waivers. Not because we had discussed it with the board, just because we were requesting it, and we knew that the town had a practice, most towns have a practice, of giving some type of waiver on fees.
Chris?
So I just wanted to clarify, when you talk about a $1.5 million reduction in value for the reduction of 12% square footage of the structure, is that the appraisal value? Sorry, through the chair.
Yes. That is an appraisal value adjustment versus a market adjustment.
Correct.
But the fact remains that you have 300 units that you'll be renting at whatever going market rate there is. So you're saying that the square footage of the units themselves shrunk, but the number remains 300, and that's not a movable number. That's
We still have 300 units.
right.
But what drives your rent is how many square feet are in your apartment. So if an apartment has 1,400 square feet, times, say, for example, simple math, $3 a square foot, that has a much better rent. Whereas if you have that same apartment and it has a lot less square footage, you receive a lot less income, but you still have all the operating costs, all the common area costs. Your operating costs stay the same, but your income has gone down.
Right, but the impact on the town is still the same. You have 300 units.
That's
Is that correct? Okay. Any comments?
I'm just gonna tag on to what you just said, which is the impact of the town is still the same. That's still, that's still the same number of bathrooms, the same number of kitchens. That's faucets, toilets, sinks, et cetera. It's an all-electric facility, so that's all of your refrigerators, your stoves, all the other things. So your 12% reduction in square feet, I agree with you, does impact your total value of the property, but also your impact to the town is still the same because your units are the same.
There's no argument that the units are the same.
Right.
I think the point that Mr. Calhoun was trying to make was, to the extent that you're in the unique, maybe not unique anymore, but you're in the position of having two similar 40B projects in front of you. One is under a LIP and a development agreement. The other is just a regular form of application. The point being that, to the extent that the LIP suggests that it is a friendly 40B and has cooperative nature with the town as part of prior to the filing, that existed here also. That there was open discussion with staff with regard to it. There were changes made to the plan prior to its being filed with you that had an impact upon the development. Nobody's whining about it. Nobody's looking for any sympathy. All we're looking to do is to be treated in a fashion similar to an other 40B that's going forward at the present time.
Chris?
So I appreciate the discussion through the chair. I think the town's stance at this time is, I don't think that they can be compared so tightly together. So looking at 409, that project deliberately reduced the number of units that are being proposed on that site. There's a difference in the scale of the structures. They're primarily, although there are the units at the front of the building that are the larger multifamily building, but a lot of them are more townhouse in style and nature. Again, reducing the massing of the structure. So a lot of that was pre-negotiated, and it's only 196 units that are being proposed as opposed to 300. The location is different. It's zoned as residential rather than in this location, which is zoned as commercial. So again, I think it's a little bit apples and oranges. I appreciate the discussion, but frankly, I think it's somewhat different in nature, this project. And certainly in terms of what the town has to consider in terms of the benefits, I think the community benefits that are being provided by, in lieu of those, fees, in consideration for, in lieu of the fees for the 409 South Street, are of higher value to the community in that location, whereas here, I think there is less value to the community in terms of the Gouch Park improvements and the complete streets improvements. We would love to have those done. We appreciate the applicants' work towards those goals, but at this stage, the value in terms of the actual construction of this building being that it is maximizing the site to the extent possible, and in terms of the infrastructure that is being contemplated, I think the value for the community is more appropriately placed in those locations, and that argument is laid out in the letter that I provided to the board.
Thank you, Chris. Did you have a comment?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I made, my position clear when we spoke about this at the last meeting. It's within the board's authority to grant this waiver, but my understanding from the HAC case law is that you're not under any obligation to do so in order to make the project economic.
If I might.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't want to belabor, particularly at this hour, I don't want to belabor whether a contribution to open space is better or worse than the offer to improve Gouch Park. It's in the eyes of the beholder. As to whether the community benefits are comparable. The sites are different, that drives a different type of development. I've done development work a long time. Developers don't give things away unless there's some reason for it. But to Mr. McGoldrick's point, maybe one would see them differently. It's very hard to understand how differently would take you to zero. Very hard.
Can you
Maybe it's
repeat
not
that?
as much of a waiver, maybe it's not the same waiver, but the concept that there would be no waiver when you're constructing affordable housing of this magnitude and doing the other things that are offered for the community strikes me as somewhat inequitable.
Okay.
So I guess in terms of fairness, and to that point, I think, as has been discussed, the town would entertain. I recognize that without the fee waivers, likely some of those commitments in terms of the Gouch Park, the contribution to the Route 20 improvements, the contribution to complete streets improvements, that those would be taken off the table, and that's understood and recognized. We wouldn't expect that in relation. So those improvements that are proposed to go above and beyond what is required, we don't expect that. We would encourage it, but certainly not an expectation.
Okay. Anything else?
Not unless there's some questions for the board to lead to some guidance toward a decision.
Any questions? No. Let's entertain comments, questions from the public. Is there anyone that wishes to be heard on this matter? Step forward and state your name, please, and address for the record.
Nadine Garnett, 43 LeBlanc Road. Can you just explain to me through the chair about the issue about the sidewalks and the grant application? So I was originally under the assumption that you were providing sidewalks, and now it seems you're not. And that was one of the issues why you were requesting the fee waivers. But now if you're not providing sidewalks and that it has to go through the state, then why would we give you fee waivers if
Mr.
you're
Collins,
actually
can I-
not providing sidewalks for us?
Can I answer that for you? Just quickly, if you don't mind, see the plan that is up there?
Yes.
That's actually from the Board of Selectmen's meeting, I believe it was in 2023 when you were working on the Streetscapes program. And as you can see on the left, it comes down around Main Street and takes a left onto North Quinsigamon. Those are existing sidewalks. And they come all the way past under the bridge and they go down to where the red is. The sidewalks along Main Street belong to Mass DOT. We have reached out to Mass DOT if they would allow us to maintain them better than they do. During this process, the sidewalks along in front of our property that exist, there's existing sidewalks there, they're in disrepair. It was recommended that if we're going to be cutting across those sidewalks to do utilities and things, could we replace those sidewalks? And we said we would replace those sidewalks. So unlike other projects, there's existing sidewalks there. So we're just upgrading them. The complete streetscapes request came to us, and that's where we hope to get in a working session with the town manager and staff to figure it out. Because when you look at the complete streetscapes program, the area in the red was awarded to Amarillo Construction for roughly $417,000, which includes all kinds of work above and beyond sidewalks. So we're a little bit confused right now because it appears that all the streetscapes, all the sidewalks you're asking a question about, are presently covered by us over in front of our project and are covered by the state. The state paid for all this work in question through a grant. So it's already been paid for. So we're kind of scratching our heads saying, okay, you're asking us to do sidewalks and you're questioning our value. The value we put together includes a contingency of almost 35%. It still only comes up to $42,000. The town came up with a value for the sidewalks, which we don't even know are missing, of $285. Roughly, was $285. It was $200 per lineal foot. When we look at the Amarillo contract and you break it down by lineal foot, that's only $107 a lineal foot, which includes storm drains, crosswalks, crosswalk lighting, 8,000 lineal feet of restriping of road. So our value is correct at 42,000, what you were asking us to do, which in the presentation to the Board of Selectmen was 4-foot wide sidewalks. Your plan now, in some places, it's 5. But we stand behind the donation that we agreed to do. We agreed to donate $42,000 to complete the streetscape, the sidewalks between the underpass and the red. But there's, not only are they shown on the town's plan as being existing, they actually exist. You can't see some of them because they're covered in grass, haven't been repaired, but they're there. But we said we'd make a donation to complete that work. We stand by it.
Chris, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so I think, I just wanted to clarify, because in terms of the grant applications that were discussed this evening, I just want to be very clear. I think there's 2 that were kind of discussed this evening. So the complete streets improvements are shown in that red. So that has been awarded, that is work that is being completed this fall and next spring. The ask, as was represented, was to, and so with this project, we'll then have along North Quinsigamond from Maine to essentially that entrance along the front. You can say, about to where the 290 highway is. Our ask was to consider improving the dilapidated but existing sidewalks from what we've now are undertaking and improving, and connect that with what the applicant is already improving with the frontage of their project. So, again, they represented the 42,000 contribution to that. The other grant that was discussed was in relation to the intersection at Main and North Quinsigamond Ave. So I just wanted to parse that out, and so that, again, without the consideration of the fee waivers, we don't anticipate that the applicant would pursue either of those grant applications. We would encourage it, but we don't anticipate that they would.
Follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes.
In regards.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. In regards to Gouch Park, with all due respect, just a quick question. Are you putting anything as far as like a park or anything for your residents with, I don't believe you are, within your site?
To the chair. We are not, with the program that we put together and we presented it to the town manager, assistant town manager in charge of operations, Keith, and it's a work in progress. We've done a couple different sketch-ups of the park. The park is, I know Don Gouch. My dad bought my second boat from him in 1974. So I have a great deal of respect for the man and would like to see the park restored. We came up with a program that was focused on sustainable reworking of the park, where we wanted to keep as much as we could without having to go through all kinds of permitting things. We came up with granite blocks set rather than putting your typical metal furniture or metal park furniture. Part of our plan is to take up the existing gravel that's in the parking lot area, go back in with pervious paving so we don't disrupt the drainage, take up the failed wooden curb that's there and put in a granite curb across there. But the goal is to not create a building or attractive nuisance or create places where people will be cleaning fish and leaving trash. Because unfortunately, fishermen now don't follow the old rule, what you take in, you take out. So it needs some work, but it's more of something that we really have to sit down. And we just got a letter from DPW at 3 o'clock this afternoon with a whole bunch of ideas and things that we need to address as a group to figure out how to make the park nice and keep it as close to what it originally was, just a really nice lawn going to the water.
So I actually was lucky enough to go fishing with the Gouches. I used to go to all of the fishing derbies with them. So I will say that the actual intention, was for that expressly. So I think to change the intent of that, I don't know. I just saw Don a couple weeks ago.
Is he in good health?
He is. So I'd be more than happy on my own time to run it by him and see what his idea of this park is. But besides that, I don't know that our need to change this park for this apartment complex really is that important. And I just want to express my opinions that it's kind of a little hideaway down there. Guys do fish down there. I know the guys that do fish down there. They like their little hideaway spot. I don't think we really need to change it, and especially to give waivers as if we're gifting something to this development and we're giving a favor, and that we should be giving waivers as if you're doing us a big solid. I do not like the way this is being presented. That was a gift, and it was an honor to have that as conservation for Don Gouch. I don't really want to see it changed a lot, and I don't like the way it's being presented, that, you know, you're doing a lot for us and that we should be doing something, scratching your back in return. So I just wanted to be on record for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to be heard? Anyone else? Please step forward. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Mary Dion, 323 North Quincy. Just in regards to the right-hand lane on North Quincy, it's not just for the town you're doing that, it's for your tenants. It's a dangerous situation, and you're gonna make it worse. 300 apartments, and you don't think that my understanding was you would replace the whole sidewalk, so you take that part of the sidewalk out, and you put a lane there, and you redo the sidewalk. But that needs to be addressed. It's a real safety issue, and as far as being friendly or unfriendly, I've read the letters, the police, the school, the fire, water and sewer. I think that's where it's coming as not a friendly from the beginning. So I don't think it's just Chris is deciding that. I think it's just how it's been presented the whole time. But I've right along said safety is the main issue, and you really have to look at that. It's a high-traffic area. I was making a left onto North Quincy tonight at 5 o'clock. Something I never seen before. A truck besides me is gonna, in the middle lane, is got his directional to go left. I was like, oh, this is a good one. So safety's a big issue there, and you want to bring more people in, you got to think about them, because they're not going to stay as tenants. They'll be
You're
breaking your
absolutely right.
leases.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, and Jack, when you want to do the drone, let me know. I'll let you know if it's windy.
All right, anyone else? All right. I think it's fair to continue this hearing to our next meeting.
Yeah, so just so the board's aware, the deadline for the closing of the public hearing would be after our next meeting, the December 22nd meeting. So at that stage, we will have to either close the public hearing or work with the applicant to continue by mutual agreement. To that end, we will work on drafting a draft decision for the board's consideration at that meeting to see if there's any additional information or additional discussion that has to be had in the public hearing. We'll include some of the condition language that was discussed this evening and throughout the process, and have those conversations for next meeting.
Great. Thank you. Can I get a motion for continuation, please? Yes.
Who would you like present at the next hearing? It's 3 days before Christmas.
We're all going to be here, so you all should be here.
All the engineers, traffic, civil.
I mean, I don't know what to.
I don't think there's anything left for us to answer is the request. And, you know, we're happy to come.
I can't. Go ahead, Chris.
Respectfully, I think as we get closer to the meeting date, we can work with the applicant. I'm sure we'll be having discussions to kind of get this as we're developing the draft decision, and we can have a discussion of what's appropriate in terms of
That's fine.
professionals.
Everybody agree with that? Okay, that's fine. Anything else?
unless the
Okay.
board has a question.
I think we're good, thank you.
We got everybody here.
Yep. All right, can I get a continuation, please?
I move to continue the hearing for 104 Main Street to December 22nd, 2025 at 6 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have some business to attend to.
Just clarification, you asked me at the end of the last one, who is Mr. Wheelock?
Oh,
You asked? It's Gershom Wheelock, he was one of the original settlers.
Megan?
I
He wasn't
did-
a founder, he
I
just
did
was a guy who
fact-check
wound
that.
up here.
We have some new business.
yes, thank you for
Yep.
that.
It's the new date.
All right, moving right along, we do have just a small piece of new business to attend to. We need to review and approve the dates for the 2026 zoning board meeting. In that discussion, the last two meetings of the year, as we are handling with the dates right now, let me just try to pull that up and tell you that we had a decision to make regarding the November and December 2026 meetings. My recommendation was to keep them before Thanksgiving and before Christmas, just like we're doing here. Just wanted to get consensus on the board. Okay, great,
Fine by me.
wonderful.
Thank you.
And the last are just a recognition of two correspondence. Letter dated October 27th, 2025, from Kathleen Quinlan regarding 104 Main Street. And secondarily, a letter dated November 18th, 2023, from Chris McGoldrick regarding 104 Main Street.
Sorry, can we just, I do need a vote to approve the 2026 ZBA.
I'm sorry.
I move to approve the proposed 2026 ZBA hearing dates.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right.
Chris's
and-
letter was 2025, not 2023.
Hmm?
You read out Chris's letter date as 2023.
Oh, I'm sorry.
2025.
At this point, I could say anything, and I will not be responsible. No, I will, I promise, I will try very hard. However, I do think that we need a request to adjourn, please.
I move to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.